That's what it sounded like yesterday on the Fast Line. Jim Montgomery, his weekly interview with the Fast Lane, alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, over the weekend, Jim Montgomery had to bench, I believe had to, Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. Those guys just weren't playing up to their own capabilities. And Jim Montgomery was then asked a follow-up question. I thought it was a really good one by Jamie Rivers on when you bench a guy, or in this case, multiple players, especially star-level players, what's the next step in that? How do you get them to get back to the players that you know they're capable of being? Here was Jim Montgomery in that response.
I believe in being solution-based. And, okay, how do we not have this happen again? Like, what can you do differently, and what can I do differently? You know, sometimes you just talk to them on the bench and you whisper in their ear that, you know, you got to pick it up here. You know, the team needs you to be at a higher level. And, you know, sometimes that works, you know, and sometimes if it gets to a point where you believe you need a spark, having someone miss a couple of rotations and shifts usually sends a stronger message than whispering in their ear if it's been something that has been occurring.
So, Alex, I think it was necessary to do this. Robert Thomas hasn't been playing his best game lately, and Pavel Buchnevich certainly hasn't either. It's been a minute since we've seen him play up to his own standards. When I heard that yesterday from Jim Montgomery, I was like, okay, honeymoon over. We have now, it's no longer the new coach bump or anything like that. Now it's Jim Montgomery's team. This is his show, man. And this team is going to be built in his image. And now we get to find out what that looks like. We are now officially in the push mode of the regular season for the St. Louis Blues, given where they were at. So I texted a couple of people this morning asking, when was the last time Robert Thomas was benched in a game? Because I couldn't recall the moment that it's happened. And I got a couple of responses. Both said Drew Bannister did this last year against the Detroit Red Wings in that 6-1 loss that they had. There was about half a period in that where Robert Thomas was put on the bench and told, hey, don't go back out there. You're going to skip a couple of shifts here. Well, the Blues ended up going on a little bit of a run the rest of the way. Robert Thomas was solid the rest of the season. He ended up having 21 points in the final 25 games of the regular season. But I wouldn't say it was like anything above expectations for him necessarily. How do they make sure that this time, Alex, they get the most out of Robert Thomas following this? Is it about Thomas's reaction? Is it about Monty? What do we do here?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think what this is about is making sure that the players understand that without you putting the entire effort onto the ice, this team is not going to go anywhere. And I go back to the end of the season last year when they had the exit interviews and hearing Robert Thomas talk and be audibly frustrated that this team was missing the playoffs again. If I'm Jim Montgomery, the message was just sent. The message was sent to the same level that Pavel Buchnevich's message was sent when Drew Bannister took over against the Tampa Bay Lightning last year, and he sat for the third period. If you play like this, you won't be playing. And in the past, when Bannister did it, it's like, this is all fine and dandy, but you know, it's kind of a tough spot that he's in because you kind of have to find a way to buy the team's confidence in you because you're an unknown. Jim Montgomery doesn't have to worry about that. Jim Montgomery is here. Jim Montgomery has signed a 5-year contract. Jim Montgomery is the head coach of the Blues. So I think what that message that was sent against Utah was, if this team is going to be a playoff contending team, if this team is going to be in a winning window soon, it's going to come down to you both. And I think he backed it up on top of sitting them in that game by splitting them up for the next game against Vegas. Like, this wasn't just about send a message, put him back out there, and let's all hug and forget about it. This was, no, you guys weren't good in this game. I broke you up against Utah, and you were broken up against Vegas. And the team, although they got that victory, they've suffered from it. So I think this is just a message from Jim Montgomery of them trying to understand the levity of this, of you guys need to be at your best on a nightly basis. You are our best players. Colton Parayko told Curbs this before that Vegas game. If our best players don't play to that level every single night, we won't win hockey games. And that's what Jim Montgomery, in my opinion, was trying to get through the head of Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich.
Yeah, Buch only played 16 minutes in that game against Vegas. That was it. It was one of his 5 smallest times on ice so far this season.
If I'm not mistaken, he was not on the ice for the 2 pulled goalie goals by Vegas. I think the first one was Brandon Saad. Or I'm sorry, the second one was Brandon Saad out there with, it was Brandon Saad, Jake Neighbors, and Braden Shen. That was the second one. And then the Jack Eichel goal was Nathan Walker, Matthew Joseph, and Braden Shen. So two separate occasions where they needed to close the game down. Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich were not out there.
That is a statement. And that's a statement the game after they had benched them. Right? This is not the individual game where they're just not getting on the ice. They had been benched in the previous game. And now, in a gotta-have-it moment, now, it didn't work out for the Blues, to be clear, but in a gotta-have-it moment, they're not trusting them to go out there on the ice. That can't continue. That is something that has to change. They've got to be able to trust Booch and Thomas to go out there and be their shutdown guys. The penalty kill, that's a situation where Monty has shown a willingness to trust his top guys to go out there on the penalty kill in a way that Bannister didn't want to this year. Yeah. And I kind of liked the way that Bannister was approaching it, but it didn't work. So you go out there now, and under Jim Montgomery, a lot of the time, they had some of their top guys going out there, including Booch, including Thomas. They have to get back to playing at a level defensively that this team can trust them, and then go out there offensively and do what they do, right? Like, we know they're capable and talented offensive players, but they have to play up to those expectations in order to trust them on the ice. So we talked a little bit about Thomas, and I think Thomas is maybe even a bigger deal than Booch, because Booch, yes, you're paying him $8 million. Yes, it's a really big contract. Yes, he's a super important player. Thomas kind of needs to be the number one guy on this team. He has to be the best player, and they're not getting that out of him right now. So, but whatever. Set that aside for a second. How do you get more out of Booch? We asked this of JR yesterday. He said, hey, they've got to get him to be a top line or at least a top 6 player in order to make this thing work. Mm-hmm. How do you get more out of Booch?
So I went back and looked at this. What I like to do is in these situations, when you go back and you reference the season that the player was at his best, what was the line combinations that he was a part of? And so for Pavel Buchnevich, you go back to that 2021-2022 season where he had 70 points. He was a part of a line that included Robert Thomas, but also Vladimir Tarasenko. The expected goals for with those guys on the ice was 19.8. Expected goals per 60 minutes was 3.22. It was the best on the team that season. And then I look at, okay, what was the third piece of that line? Obviously, they've got Thomas and Buchnevich, and it's a goal scorer. It's the guy that his sole purpose on the ice is to put the puck in the back of the net. And I personally believe you've got to have guys with distinguished roles on the ice. Yes, it's a positionless game now to where defenseman can play forward, forward can play defense. But when you've got your 3 lines out there, 3 forwards out there for one line that you're trying to build chemistry with, you've got a goal scorer, you've got a puck distributor, and you've got a hound dog. You've got a guy that's going after pucks and hunting them down. Look no further than the Braden Shen line right now. One of the best lines in hockey. It's got Dylan Holloway, who's that hound dog. It's got Braden Shen, who is the distributor, and it's got Jordan Kyrou, that's the goal scorer. And I think what's happening is Pavel Buchnevich is trying to do more than what he's supposed to. Pavel Buchnevich is trying to be the goal scorer on top of being the guy who is hunting down pucks. And I don't think that works for him. Pavel Buchnevich, why is he one of the most underrated two-way forwards in the National Hockey League? Because he's not focusing on scoring goals. Sure, he could put 30 in the back of the net, but it's because you've got that threat that's always scoring goals. And think of the guys that they've played with this season. Jake Neighbors, Brandon Saad. Who's been the goal scorer on that line?
They haven't had one.
They haven't had one.
And they don't. Here's the problem.
They don't.
I don't think they have that guy on this team.
Because you're not putting Bolduc up there. You're not putting Bolduc up there. And that's why I think their hope is
They're barely putting Bolduc into the game,
Yeah.
much less on the top line for 20 minutes a night.
Their hope is Jimmy Snuggerud's that guy. But it might take a little bit. I don't know what this is going to look like after out of college. He's tearing it up right now. But for the now, I also think some of this is that center position that was kind of hammered into his head at the beginning of the year. I wonder if there's a little bit too much thinking on the ice.
There might be. I love the way that you framed that, though. They're asking too much out of him. I think this was the case with Jordan Kyrou for a really long time. I think Jordan Kyrou sometimes got put into this position where it was like, hey, man, can you be Pavel Buchnevich? It's like, no, bro, it ain't happening.
No better.
I will be a really good player for you, and I have the ability to distribute. I can be a goal scorer, and I can do pretty well defensively, as we've seen this year. And I do think that's a part of his evolution as a player. But no, I'm never going to be what Pavel Buchnevich was. It's just not in my range of outcomes. That's okay. Guess who can be? Dylan Holloway. Dylan Holloway can do the things that Pavel Buchnevich does for the most part, and he's faster. He's got everything you could possibly want. So On that second line, you get more advantageous matchups for Jordan Kyrou. You have him with a guy like Braden Shin, who's more than happy to go to the front of the net. You have him with Dylan Holloway, who can go retrieve the pucks. So now you've got a line that works. Everybody knows their role. They're not trying to do too much, and it works for them. On that top line, or what should be your top line, you don't have that. You've got two of them. I've got a really great distributor, one of the best in the league with Robert Thomas. I've got Pavel Buchnevich, who can do a little bit of anything depending on what you're asking of him. That third piece, though, isn't there. I need a pure goal scorer on that top line. And I think this is a personnel issue as much as anything. And they don't have that guy right now on the team, and I'm not sure they're going to have that guy on the team this year. And that leaves you wanting more. It leaves you wanting more from Robert Thomas. It leaves you wanting more from Pavel Buchnevich. I think their best chance to get the highest upside with that line is probably Jake Neighbors. I think he's the guy that allows you to open things up because now he can go to the front of the net. Buch can kind of roam around a little bit more, and you've got Thomas as that distributor. It just hasn't necessarily clicked with those three together at times.
And I think personally the problem with that, on the offensive zone, it's great. In the defensive zone, it's the problem because you just don't have three guys that are playing that way. And that's where I feel like too much gets into the head of a Pavel Buchnevich to where it's like, oh, shoot, I got to get this guy. Wait a minute, Thomas is out there. I got to go get this guy. To where when there's distinguished roles, you know how that line is supposed to work. The best defense for forwards is spending the time in the offensive zone. And to put this into a little bit better perspective, that line that I referenced of Buch, Thomas, and Tarasenko, they were producing in terms of expected goals per 60 minutes for and against the same level that Dylan Holloway, Braden Shen, and Jordan Kyrou are impacting the game right now. And why are they doing it? It's because Kyrou, Holloway, and Shen all know exactly what they're supposed to do on the ice.
Blues expected to be back on the ice for a morning skate here in just about 20 minutes, so we'll certainly have an update for you on what the line combinations look like today. We'll be interested to see if they end up putting Buch and Thomas back together. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Blues off again tonight, two days off. I saw yesterday, I think it was Chris Kerber who posted this on Twitter, mentioned that this is one of the lightest workloads that the team has had in a 10-game stretch all season long.
Yeah,
a 10-day stretch, rather.
3 games in the next 10 days, lightest stretch over a 10-day span. They got another one in March, and to put that into perspective, Calgary and Vancouver are going to play 5 in their next 10 days to where they're going to be within 1 game of the Blues by the end of the month.
There you go.
So
games in hand starting to change a little bit.
And Vancouver lost last night. They were up 2-1 to Buffalo, and they lost 3-2 in regulation.
That's certainly a helpful thing.
Yep, we can complain about the Blues being a 500 team all we want, but Vancouver's playing less than 500. Calgary's playing less than 500, and surprisingly, it's why that Utah game sucks so much that they lost. Utah's playing less than 500 in their last 10.
Any worries about Nashville potentially turning this thing around? They've won their last 4 games.
Yeah. No. Unless Barry Trotz told them that you can't go see U2 in the Sphere, I'm not too worried about a 12-game win streak from Nashville.
Just making sure we're all on the same page there. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Alex, we got this question over on the YouTube chat, the Graveyard. John said, is Andy in for Alex today? Now, the YouTube chat, I don't know if you're aware of this. When you wear glasses, it's Andy. When you don't wear glasses, it's Alex.
What does that mean? Like Andy who? Andy Strickland?
I don't know. It's just you're Andy when you have glasses on, and you're Alex when you don't.
I could do it this way, but there's going to be a lot of this.
Have we made a switch? Have we officially gone full glasses every day at this point?
We've made a switch.
Because it's been like 6 days in a row.
We've made a switch, yes, because my contacts aren't here yet. I ordered them like 2 weeks ago, and they're still not here. You know that moment when you're like, oh, I got an extra pair of contacts, and they slice down the middle, and I'm like, oh, I'll just go put new ones on.
Do you do the dailies or the monthlies?
No, I
do
the monthlies. But like in my mind, I've always got some in my bathroom vanity, and I walked in and I'm like, yeah, I got an extra pair, and then you look, you're like, oh, bleep, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to wear glasses, and it's not like glasses for 2 days. You order them.
Me on that scam of the dailies.
Oh yeah, no, bleep that, man.
The amount of money that I spent on contacts is absolutely absurd.
The eye doctor, every time I go, they're like, you change them on a monthly basis? I'm like, yeah, every month to 6 months I change them. It's fine. You gotta milk it as long as you can, but once they slice down the middle.
Yeah, suddenly
this is what you get.
This is
what you get.
All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into some NFL quick hitters. I don't know, man. It's a nerdy thing, I guess.
Is Andy a nerd?
I suppose, in this scenario.
Oh. Well, let me talk like this then for the rest of the day.
Welcome to my world.
Coming up next,
if Ichiro Suzuki can't get in unanimously, who is going to be the first position player that can? And will it be a former Cardinal? We'll tell you about that next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So yesterday we got the Hall of Fame results, and it's a hell of a class, honestly. You look at it, you got CC Sabathia, you got Billy Wagner, and of course, Ichiro. Ichiro gets in. Everybody assumes, well, this one is going to be unanimous. What is there not to like about Ichiro Suzuki and what he was able to do as a major league player?
One of the nicest guys ever, too.
3,000 hits, 500 stolen bases in his career. Guy hit above 300 in an era where nobody hits above 300 anymore. In one season in 2004, he hit 372. I was trying to describe to T-Bone, we were trying to do this together, Alex, earlier today, what it was like to watch prime Ichiro. And what I came to is like, and this is the best that I can do. If you got something better on the text line, I'd love to hear it, because T-Bone really didn't see Ichiro until his like New York Yankees days.
Right.
It's like watching Luis Ariz at the plate in terms of the contact, but you combine that with like the speed and the gracefulness and the defense and the base running of like Mookie Betts. So if you add all of that up, that's kind of the player combination that he was. A true slap hitter, but better at that criteria than anybody I've ever seen in my adult life, certainly. He was amazing.
He won the MVP in his rookie year. Like, think about that for a minute.
Now, he was a little different than your typical rookie. He was 27 years old.
Totally, but he still beat out Jason Giambi, Brett Boone, Roberto Alomar. Like, he won an MVP. Even if he was 27, he still won an MVP as a rookie.
And let's remember the era that he's playing in here.
Right, 2001.
He's playing in the steroid era, like prime steroid era. A-Rod was top 10 in MVP voting that year.
And he won it with 8 home runs. Barry
Bonds, for just a little more context, that same year won the MVP in the National League with 73 home runs.
Like, are you freaking kidding me?
And in the American League, Ichiro won it with 8. And in the National League, Barry Bonds did it with 73.
Just a talent disparity between leagues.
And he just led Major League Baseball in almost every single season in his first 10 years in the major leagues. Like, the moment Ichiro went on that ballot, I'm like, cool, instant Hall of Famer, should be unanimous Hall of Famer from the success that he had from 2001. In all reality, all the way up until post-New York Yankees. Now, he wasn't the same player, but the Miami Marlins and Seattle Mariners were like, 45 years old? Yeah, we'll take Ichiro on our team.
Let me put this another way. He led the league in intentional walks in 2002.
Ichiro did?
In 2002.
In 2002.
And he hit 8 home runs.
He was intentionally walked 27 times. That season, he had 8 home runs and 51 ribbies. Again, intentionally walked 27 times.
And then he did it 2 years later with 19 leading Major League Baseball.
He was unreal, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just an unbelievable baseball player. And so that gets us to what Alex wanted to discuss, because it's his turn to get on a high horse.
Yeah.
Normally, this is my role on the show, but Alex was big mad today. Not pre-mad, just big mad after the results were revealed yesterday. Ichiro was 1 vote short of becoming the first unanimous Hall of Famer as a position player. We only have one in the history of Major League Baseball thus far, and it's Mariano Rivera. Nobody else has reached that criteria, which is insane, but another conversation for another day. The one that we got the new results on yesterday was Ichiro. Alex, what did you make of this when you saw the news?
I hated it, and it legitimately pissed me off last night. If Ichiro Suzuki, and albeit even if Ken Griffey Jr., because he should have been a unanimous Hall of Famer, if Ichiro Suzuki can't be named a Hall of Famer 100% of the votes, then we need to change the voting system, or we need to take the people that are making the votes out of this. Or frankly, the guy that said no to Ichiro, his ballot should be posted everywhere and saying this is the individual that said he's not a Hall of Famer. What criteria about Ichiro can you look at and say, not a Hall of Famer? There's not one. We just went through all of these things. The era he played in, the success that he had, the type of player he was, the longevity that he had in his career. He's got 3,000 hits. Everything about Ichiro screams Hall of Famer. But yet there's somebody sitting in their house looking at that with the ballot in front of them that says, he's going to get in, or I'm going to vote somebody else in, or you know what? Nobody should be a unanimous Hall of Famer. If you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. And it is redonkulous that Ichiro Suzuki is the guy that they sit there and say, nope, I'm going to stick to my standards, that if Derek Jeter isn't the unanimous Hall of Famer, we're not going to let BK speak on that one. Or if
That was correct.
If Ken Griffey Jr. is not the unanimous Hall of Famer, if Ichiro Suzuki is the unanimous Hall of Famer, then there should be no unanimous Hall of Famer, which I think is a joke because the guy that's going to be coming up soon, the former Cardinal, is also a unanimous Hall of Famer.
Ichiro is a better player than Derek Jeter, but that's, again, another conversation for another day.
God.
Do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I do disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It's correct, but okay. Do you guys think that Albert Pujols is going to be...
Jesus. Unbelievable, man. It's correct, but no.
Man, building strong from yesterday when he went blah, blah, blah with a text.
I mean, come on. We can have the conversation if you really want to, but it's a losing argument. All right.
Okay, tough guy.
So if it's not Ichiro, who's going to be the next, or the first, position player that is a unanimous Hall of Famer? Because I think there's only one guy that's really, you guys tell me if you disagree with this, I think there's really only one guy that can potentially be that of this generation, and it's Albert.
And it's not going to be him. If Ichiro can't get in, there's no way the individual that voted Ichiro a no is going to look at Albert's criteria beyond 2011 and say, nope, not a Hall of Famer.
I think, and it's not even necessarily that they don't think he's a Hall of Famer. It's just the idea that, hey, if Ken Griffey Jr. and I don't know, Babe Ruth,
He just
and
didn't want to say
Wagner,
Derek Jeter.
if these guys, Ted Williams, Stan Musial, if these guys weren't unanimous Hall of Fame vote receivers, then neither is Albert Pujols, or neither is Ichiro, neither is whoever the next guy that ends up coming up. But,
Which is why that they need to change the voting criteria.
like, is Shohei going to be the next guy? Because he's probably the next one post-Albert, right? Am I missing somebody else?
Harper?
Betts would be up there, but
Harper.
But yeah, I mean Ohtani's.
Clayton Kershaw's not a position player.
Yeah, I would say it's probably Ohtani would be the best shot for unanimous, but I don't even know what your argument would be against like Mookie Betts, for example.
I'd love to know the argument against Albert.
I just don't understand the way that voters go about this. And to be clear, it's a very, very small minority. Like yesterday, there were 394 votes. And of those 394 voters, 393 of them voted for Ichiro.
Yeah.
So we're yelling at literally one person who, among this large swath of individuals that is voting on the Hall of Fame every year, one guy was the jamoke that decided, I'm going to be the look at me guy, even though he's not out here actually revealing his ballot.
Did you just use jamoke?
Yeah, man. I got my moments.
That was good, man.
All right.
What the heck was that, Jamoke?
Just had a moment.
Just Google it, man.
Can I?
No, I don't know.
That's why I was hoping we could move on.
I'm not moving on from that.
I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's the same thing as why we have to do this game, this dog and pony show of, hey, not a Hall of Famer yet. Can't be in on the first ballot. We got to wait a little while. Billy Wagner, he's going to get in. Just look at the way that the voting process is going. He's going to get in. Carlos Beltran, he'll get in, just not this year. He's not quite there. We got to give it one more year. What?
Yeah.
Nothing has changed for the criteria for these guys. Nothing. Now, this year we got 3 players in. You know what would be better for future ballots and for you to be able to game the system with your ballot guys? It would be better if you get all of the guys that are actually Hall of Famers into the Hall of Fame at the first moment that you can. Right. Because then in the next ballot, those guys, you no longer have to vote for them. And now we can just go with the next selection. And if that means in any given year there are no Hall of Famers on the ballot, so be it. Then there are no guys that are worthy of the criteria to get into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. But the way that we do this is just... It's crazy to me, man. It's all a game to some of these guys.
Well, and it's not fair to lump all of these voters into the same one. You're right. Like, I thought Buster Olney put it perfect earlier today. He's like, look, a suggestion so it doesn't make the Baseball Writers Association look bad. The group makes its participation in the voting contingent on the Hall of Fame releasing all ballots to the public. Makes sense that an association of journalists would insist upon transparency. Like, we did the same thing with Ken Griffey Jr., to where I believe it was one person that voted against him.
Now, to be clear, Baseball Writers wanted this to be revealed publicly.
This was the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame decided it ain't happening. We're not going to the public ballots for everybody.
Which, if you're the Hall of Fame, like, you should have this transparency, because if there's going to be one person that sits there and tries to die on this hill of, no, he doesn't deserve to be a Hall of Famer right away because Babe Ruth wasn't a unanimous and he's not better than Babe Ruth. These guys' stats deserve to be Hall of Famers. And if he's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer.
Andrew Jones, to me, is one of those guys.
Agreed.
This is his 8th year on the ballot. He got 66% of the votes. He's probably going to get in. But it's going to take probably 2 more years. It'll be his final opportunity, and people like Billy Wagner this year, where he's at 82% of the vote, by the way. He didn't just get in by like he got in overwhelmingly this time. Nothing changed. Literally nothing changed about Billy Wagner from what it was 10 years ago on the back of his baseball card to who he is today, other than people saying, well, this is his last time. Let's go ahead and get Billy the Kid in. What are we doing, man?
I hate this so much.
Andrew Jones, 8th year on the ballot, 66% of the vote. It keeps going up every year. He's going to get into the Hall of Fame, but we can't do it now. Carlos Beltran, much to the chagrin of Tanner Hendrickson, 70% of the vote in his 3rd year on the ballot.
I
Guess
wouldn't
what?
vote for him any year.
Carlos Beltran is going to get into the Hall of Fame. It's going to happen. But we couldn't have it this year because it's only his 3rd year on the ballot. It's just some of the way that we go about this stuff is crazy to me. Out of curiosity, because we have seen kind of what the 2026 ballot looks like. Other than the guys that I just mentioned, because it's very possible Jones or Beltran gets in next year. I think Beltran really might.
Ugh.
Who else from the new ballot for next season do you guys think is going to potentially get in? Some of the notable names include Ryan Braun, Edwin Encarnacion, Cole Hamels is on there, Howie Kendrick, Hunter Pence, Rick Porcello is on there, Neil Walker. Maybe you think he's the Hall of Fame. Who do you guys think, if anybody, will get in of that new crop of players that's eligible?
To quote the distinguished Brad Underwood, nobody.
I think that's true.
I think if you're going to try and tell me like you have to pick one, it would be Cole Hamels. That'd be the closest to it. But I don't think any of these guys deserve to be on the list over names that we just went through, like Andrew Jones and some of these guys who are Hall of Famers. I don't see a name on this list that screams, baseball Hall of Famer. Like Ryan Braun's season completely changed once the steroids were put out there. And a lot of these guys were Hall of really, really good, but they weren't Hall of Famers.
Yeah, the only guy for me that maybe has a chance in the new group coming in is Hamels. But even him, like, the reason I say the new group is because he's more in line of, hey, what does the modern pitcher look like? Because he's not a, 240 guy. Now, he did get to, 215 a couple of times in terms of innings pitched, but he only finished top 5 in Cy Young voting once. And it's hard for me to look at that and go, okay, this guy was really, really good in his career. But if he only finished top 5 in the Cy Young once, is that guy really a Hall of Famer? And my answer would be no. And if it's not him, I don't think it's anybody else. I wouldn't vote for Ryan Braun. And 1, it's steroid related, but 2, it's also I just don't know that he had that great of a career.
Agreed.
Outside of his 1 MVP season. So I don't think there's anybody new on the ballot that's going to end up getting in.
Hamels is an interesting case because of what you guys were talking about. And I don't think he's a first ballot guy by any stretch, but
10 years.
8, something like that. Like maybe because there are so few starting pitchers that are likely to hit the ballot in future seasons that are clear and obvious Hall of Famers. I think when you look at his criteria, what he was as a starter compared to some of the new crop, to your point, T-Bone, of starters that are likely to be on the ballot, I think he's going to match up pretty favorably against many of them, whether you're looking at just full innings or the volume stats in general, right? Wins, innings pitched, and then some of the other criteria potentially that they end up looking at. But to me, I don't think that Cole Hamels, just top of mind, is this guy a Hall of Famer? No. Isn't he? When you do the name recognition, he to me does not fit that criteria. Yep. But the criteria is going to have to change because there just aren't starting pitchers that are what they once were. I think you mentioned Clayton Kershaw. He's the guy. Yeah. He's the last one potentially that fits the old school criteria of what a starter was to get into the Hall.
I'm just saying, just like we complain after the officials make bad calls or favor Patrick Mahomes, they should speak to the media after a bad game. No. The guy that voted not for Ichiro, he should have to hold a press conference in Cooperstown of why Ichiro's not a Hall of Famer.
I had to turn off the fast lane yesterday because we were taking Luca home from day daycare, and they were talking about the Patrick Mahomes stuff, and I was like, Luca, we don't listen to this.
We don't listen to this blasphemy.
These conspiracy theories will not be acknowledged in this household.
Can I ask? Can I ask a quick question on the Hamels thing?
All right, enough. I got something else.
I got baseball.
I kind of got down a rabbit hole, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts here.
Sure.
And
we're way over time, but go ahead.
We all know my thoughts on WAR, anyways. But if Hamels gets in, does that help the Adam Wainwright case?
Yes.
Because Wainwright has 4 top 5 Cy Young finishes, has basically the same ERA, has basically the same amount of innings pitched, and had a longer career, and has more wins, by the way, which I don't think that matters.
World Series too? Hamels has 1. Wainwright's got 2.
Even though I don't think Waino. Well, I guess he pitched in 06.
He
but
was a
started
part of the
11.
damn team.
But I
He was
think
technically on the team, even though not active. So
what's interesting though is like his WAR. Wainwright's WAR is 18 less than Cole Hamels. Or what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing unless BK wants to say Mason wins a superstar.
Correct. It will help. Like if you go to Baseball Reference and you look at the similarity scores, the 6th most similar pitcher to Cole Hamels in his major league career is Adam Wainwright. So it will absolutely help his case. I also think he might be a little bit below Cole Hamels on that list, according to some. Some would say that. I don't know if that's necessarily the thoughts of this show, but some would say maybe he is a little below Cole Hamels. And so I don't know if it gets him in, but it definitely would help his
John
case.
Heyman called the guy that didn't vote for Ichiro a dope. I'd call him a dork.
He's Alex's T-Bone on BK. NFL Quick Hitters is next.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Carber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Alex, if you were Liam Cohen, would you be interested in the Jacksonville Jaguars job? Because he sure as hell ain't. Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was a part of the the Jacksonville Jaguars search, and they seemingly had him as the number one candidate. And earlier today, he agreed to a contract extension with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to stay there as their OC. He's doing the Ben Johnson. He's saying, hey, this worked out well for that guy. He got the quarterback that he wanted. He got the team that he wanted. He got the contract that he wanted. He stayed with the team where he knew he was going to have success in future seasons because the talent was all coming back. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stick with the Buccaneers. He's got Baker Mayfield coming back, got all those receivers coming back next year. You got Bucky Irving in year 2. The offensive line improved a decent amount. He's going to stick with the Bucs and decided to spurn the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I hear what you're saying, but Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne.
I'm going to ask a question that might sound ridiculous on the surface.
You didn't let me finish, man. Christian Kirk.
Would you rather have as your quarterback for next season, if you're an OC/head coach?
If one of these is Trevor Lawrence, I'll take the other guy.
Would you rather have Baker Mayfield or Trevor Lawrence?
Baker Mayfield.
It's not even close.
Yeah, it's not even
Mayfield.
close.
Man, that's crazy. I think you're right. That's crazy.
I mean, to answer the question that you asked, if I'm going to go interview for Jacksonville's job, I've got two things. Is my quarterback a guy that could get me to the playoffs? And is my general manager going to be on my same page? And guess what? I think both of those are big-time no's. So I don't blame Liam Cohen for being like, nah, I understand that you guys want me. Give me the bag of money and I'll go. And they're like, no, we can't do that. Cool. I'm going back to Tampa where I'll wait for my job to actually show up.
All right, so now we look at the Jaguar side of things. It ain't great. Robert Saleh is heading to Jacksonville today to interview for the job. Sounds like he might be the front runner.
Dead man walking.
The other one that they're looking into is Patrick Graham. Now, you may not be familiar. He's not a huge name inside of the game, but he's a really good defensive coordinator. Previously was with the New York Giants, had some success there, and then has spent the last few years with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have a lot of problems. He's done a good job as their DC, so I'll give credit where it's due. I don't know that he's somebody that I would have at the top of my list as head coach candidate, but a good DC nonetheless. You got to expand this search.
Yeah.
Those can't be your top candidates for this job, Jacksonville. And frankly, what are you doing with this GM thing? If Trent Baalke is the thing, your general manager right now, that is preventing you from hiring the best candidate possible for that job, you have to fire Trent Baalke. Of all the GMs in the league, that's the guy that you're keeping?
He's put together a winning team in Jacksonville.
Yeah, Trayvon Walker, the defensive end that you took over Aiden Hutchinson, that's been a disaster, taking him over Hutchinson.
Disaster feels a little harsh.
I don't think it is.
Hutchinson
I think it's
never
the
done.
coaching, and that's what Baalke
Doug
would tell you.
Peterson has not been
Christian
good.
Kirk, the contract that he got, disastrous.
Coaching.
Disastrous again, man.
The wide receiver from Buffalo, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the big Gabe Davis, the contract that you gave him, disastrous this past offseason.
That was a bad idea.
Taking running back, why am I blanking on all
Leonard
these names right now?
Fournette.
ETN, where they did, disaster.
That was an Urban Meyer thing, coaching.
Sure.
That was a Trevor Lawrence thing.
They have
One of
made
his
some
buddies.
terrible decisions, and that's the guy you're backing? It's just really strange right now.
I just basically told you what he's told. Is it Shad Khan? Is the owner's name right?
Yeah.
I just basically told you what Baalke's done. Hey, not me, coaching.
All right, next thing up, as we go through some NFL quick hitters, other coaching news across the league. The Patriots have decided to hire, no surprise here, Josh McDaniels as their next offensive coordinator. What is old is new again. Josh McDaniels is a good OC. Terrible head coach, one of the worst in recent history. Good offensive coordinator. Do you guys like the hire, though?
It makes sense. Do I like it? I don't know. I like the Mike Vrabel hire. So, I think anything Mike Vrabel is going to do is going to be successful. They've got the quarterback that's got the talent. And frankly, Josh McDaniel might not be a great head coach, but he's really good offensively on the coordinator side. So, yeah, I don't mind it. Do I think it's going to be the long-term answer? Absolutely not. I think it's going to be good for a couple of years and it's going to fall off.
Yeah, I like it because we've seen him have success. He's familiar with the organization. The one thing that does have me kind of weary on this hire is it feels like they're still chasing what they had with Brady.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. That's my concern.
When Vrabel brings him in, it feels like he's like, we're going to build this the way that Tom Brady and I did it. And it's just like, well, you don't have Tom Brady anymore. Like, Drake May's different, man. He can run. Brady never could run. Like, I think the hire makes sense. It's worth trying, but I still would have. There's some of that in the back of my mind. Like, okay, couldn't we do something that's different than what Tom Brady did when he was here?
I get the hire. I don't necessarily like the hire. Does that make sense?
I just don't know if there's anything else out there.
It's just one of those things. I think you're right, Alex. It's one of those things that I look at and I'm like, man, it's just so uninspired.
Yeah.
It probably could work. I can see how it ends up being something that you look back on it. It's kind of like the Mike McCarthy stuff. It's not inspired, but I get it. Like if you were the Bears and you missed out on Ben Johnson, yeah, I understand how you end up with a Mike McCarthy or a Pete Carroll. I get that. It just doesn't, it gets nobody excited. And that's kind of how I feel about the Josh McDaniels thing. All right, last thing here. The Dallas Cowboys. You guys see all the updates that are coming out today?
It's brutal.
Yeah, Jerry Jones is going to have to do damage control.
So they're interviewing offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. You guys are familiar with him here in St. Louis.
He was awesome.
To potentially be their next head coach in Dallas.
That was sarcasm, by guys.
Really, Jerry?
This is the headline that I read earlier this morning on Sports Illustrated. Hiring Brian Schottenheimer would spell disaster for the Cowboys. Yeah, that's a Jerry Jones hire right there.
A guy that I follow in Dallas. He does a bunch of work down there, radio-wise, writing and whatnot. Jeff Kavanaugh. He tweeted out earlier today, he said, I'm not a reporter, but I want Cowboys fans to be prepared for Brian Schottenheimer as head coach and Jason Witten somewhere on the staff.
So
Jerry just can't help himself, dude. If you have not worked for Jerry before, you're ineligible to have this job.
Yep. Here's a question. Are they hiring him? Are they hiring him to be fired so Jason Witten can have 1 year under his belt?
Probably.
Because I think the end goal here is Jason Witten as the head coach, but they don't want Jason Witten right now.
It's what happened. Remember Josh McCown with the Houston Texans?
Yes.
Or they really wanted to hire Josh McCown, but they had the situation where they had the Rooney Rule stuff was kind of in the background, and they were like, oh, we can't really have him jump the line. So they decided not to hire Josh McCown, but they really wanted to hire Josh McCown. I think that's kind of what's happening here. Is they're like, we don't know if Jason Witten's necessarily ready to be the head coach of the Cowboys, but we want Jason Witten to be the next head coach of the Cowboys.
Mike Schilt?
Yeah, he's getting the coach in waiting role. So next year he will be your 100%. Head coach. Brian Schottenheimer is going to be the sacrificial lamb for Dallas this year when they suck, and then they're able to go out there and make some new additions, and then Jason Witten takes over and is the savior for the Dallas Cowboys.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now. We'll get to questions and answers next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Let's bring our off-air conversation on the air, okay? We were just talking about
that. I don't want to get political.
We were just talking about it because Tom Brady was on with Colin Cowherd just a moment ago, and he was asked about his future in broadcasting. He's got a 10-year deal, and he said, hey, got 10 years left on my deal, 9 years left, excuse me. Maybe longer, you just never know. If Fox wants me, then I want to keep going. Keep it going because it's been really fun thus far. So it sounds like Brady is expected back in the booth next year. I don't think Brady's been very good this season. I thought he was a little better this past week. I thought the environment maybe helped him get going a little bit in that game and let loose a little bit more than he had been previously. But I still thought it was a pretty sharp downgrade from what we had with Greg Olsen watching these games. We'll see if that continues to improve over the next couple of weeks, especially as he gets the Super Bowl this year. How would you guys rank the national broadcasts right now? So you've got Amazon Prime on Thursdays.
I forgot about that.
The Fox and CBS #1 team, so Brady and Romo. Sunday night on NBC, and then Monday night on ESPN. How would you rank those 5 right now?
I think #1 for me is NBC's.
I agree.
#2, man, I'm probably in the minority here, but I still, even if he sounds like he's dying out, Michaels is still my favorite. So I'd have Michaels as 2. I would have Buck and Aikman as, no, you know what? I would have Nance and Brady as 3, and then I would have Buck and Aikman as 4.
Really? You got Buck and Aikman that low?
Yeah, because I prefer to listen to the Manning cast over Buck and Aikman. I think there's a better alternative to Monday Night Football when the Manning cast is going. And it's nothing against Buck and Aikman. I just don't think they provide the same entertainment that other option does for me.
I would go #1 NBC. I think Tirico's fantastic with Collinsworth.
I just love Collinsworth.
Collinsworth is the best
He's
analyst
so
going.
good.
#2 for me would be Buck and Aikman. I think they're good. I think they're just right below the NBC crew for me. #3, this is a significant drop off after the top 2. I think #3, I would still go Burkhardt and Brady. And I don't think Brady's been good. I like Kevin Burkhardt. #4 for me would be Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit. #5 is Romo and Nance. Romo and Rams don't sound like they gel well together. And Romo is like off doing his thing. Nance is off doing his thing. I thought it was one of the worst broadcasts I had heard this past weekend in the AFC game with the Bills and Ravens.
Somebody on the text line, I think this is a really good point. NBC gives me the biggest feel with his intro and all of that stuff that goes around the game. Fox is last, even before Brady. Nance and Romo at 2, Buck and Aikman at 3, Fox dead last. I feel that way about NBC. When your team is playing on NBC on Sunday night, it's
huge. It
feels big. And ESPN used to feel that way, the ABC, ESPN Monday Night Football game. That felt like the big game of the week. Now it has turned over, and I think it is Sunday Night Football. So I would go NBC as my top crew. I do have ESPN second, though. I still really like Buck. And I think Aikman has been really good the past couple of years. He's gotten into this effort mode, and even though it drove me nuts with the penalty stuff that he complained about on Saturday, that's what everybody watching the game was feeling. And that's really a talent, I think, in the booth, is when you can capture what everybody at home is talking about in the moment, because there's so much going on. T-Bone, Alex, you guys both do broadcasts. You know, you can kind of lose sight of what the other conversation is around the game because you're so honed in on what you're trying to get across. Mm-hmm. I think Aikman has become very good at, hey, this is something that is going to mean something to fans that are watching at home. Let's talk about it. And he found that on Saturday. It was the penalty stuff. So credit where it's due, even though it drove me nuts. I think he's really good at that. So I'd go NBC 1, ESPN 2. I would probably have the CBS crew 3. And I think there's a stark decline after the second one. Prime 4, and Fox for me would be 5. And it's sad because Fox last year was my #1 broadcast crew. I think Greg Olsen coming off of that broadcast has really done some harm for them. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Before we get to that, though, Alex, do you want to get this out there from Lou Korac? Philip Broberg just took a spill at practice.
Son of a...
Hobbled off after the drill, put little weight on his right leg. Don't want to overreact to this because it's practice. Could be something small, maybe he tweaked an ankle, and he'll be out there for the game tonight. But do you think it's worth mentioning? It's tomorrow, excuse me. I keep forgetting that they have multiple days off, and that's allowed in the NHL now.
Just not for the Blues.
It's reckless, Alex, but Any thoughts on?
JR tweeted it out too. Broberg went down in practice, no weight on right leg as he was helped off. Was that the same?
I can't remember.
I don't remember if that was the same one or not.
I thought it was his left. I could be wrong, but I don't remember. I thought it was his left leg.
Yeah. Philip Broberg leaves the game after Mitch Marner falls on his right leg.
Oh, that's not good. Like you said, not to make anything out of it, which that's the important thing. Who knows? It could be fine. The fact that he's not putting any pressure on it, and that was the problematic leg earlier. Oh, that's not the news I needed to hear today.
Yeah, just fingers crossed. If you're the prayerful type, send up the prayers to the big guy.
I already did that for the earlier in the season, and he got back.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, in all seriousness, that's really bad for the Blues because, like, that's 2 injuries towards that side of. Now, again, who knows if it's the knee, could be the ankle, could just be the foot, and it was dinged up and they needed to get some ice on it. If it's the knee, that's where it's really concerning because you don't want 2 injuries to the same knee area in one season.
It's worth noting as well, they did skate earlier today. They have the same lines as the previous game.
I don't care about that anymore, man.
Yeah. So Broberg was on the right side, so, it's a little easier to replace that now. Just do Falk and Suter.
You serious right now?
Yeah, so not ideal.
All right, who's going over number 1 overall this year in the pick?
I mean, they're not going to be that bad.
Yeah, relax over there.
Broberg's had a little bit of a coming back to earth moment too.
Yeah.
Oh, you cool with with the other options that are going to play in the top 4? You ready for one of the other 2 to play 19 minutes a night?
Justin Falk.
Yeah.
He was already doing it. You ready for the other ones?
Not in the last game. Justin Falk had been demoted.
Yeah, well, not anymore.
Yeah.
You're not lying.
Hope you're ready for a top 4 that includes Parayko, Fowler, all okay. Fowler and Falk and Scott Perunovich.
Well, it's what's his face?
Suter?
They've got Suter on top.
No, man, my boy just turned 40. We need to make sure we take care of those legs.
Practice today was Fowler, Parayko, Suter, and Broberg. All right,
not anymore.
Next, the Cardinals' young players said the quiet part out loud. We can't hide anymore. What does that mean for them heading into this 2025 season? And how does this youth movement and the reset change the way that Ollie Marmol is going to manage games? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion. For some of you, we are 3 weeks now into your New Year's resolutions. Maybe for you, that means going out there, losing a little bit of the unwanted weight that you gained over the holiday season. For others, maybe that's finding a way to improve what you feel on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you have a little bit less energy than you once did. You're not getting the same out of your workouts. That could be due to low testosterone. It happens, especially when you get into your 30s, 40s. So if that is something that's affecting you right now, or you think it might be, go ahead and check out Victory Men's Health. Super easy process. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can check them out today online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. When you go over there, click on the top right corner of the page. It says book now. Put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them a little bit about what you'd like to do to unlock your inner champion, and tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you to Victory Men's Health. Again, 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. Check them out today at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, over the weekend at winter warm-up, there were a lot of questions for the young players about what this means. You get into this reset, and now the locker room's yours, according to Sonny Gray. And he's going to turn things over to them. He's going to be there to guide them, but he wants them to spread their wings and fly. Not my words, his words. So when we talked to, Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, etc., Mason Wynn, there were a lot of questions about, okay, what does this mean for you guys? How are you going to take on the added responsibility and potentially the added leadership that comes along with this? I thought Lars Nootbaar had a really good answer on this about what it means to no longer have guys like Goldie and Arenado potentially in the locker room and what he's potentially going to be able to take on because of that.
Since 2021, obviously we know, the marquee guys, and Albert came in 22 and came in and did his Albert Pujols thing. And so it's just been like, us as a group, we've been able to hang back, do our thing, get our flowers wherever they may be, but then not take any of the brunt of it. But I think now there's no hiding anymore. So it's just like, we got to be ready. And so that's an exciting part about it. We're going to have some growing pains, I think, as a group, but we're going to go through it together, which is nice. Unfortunately, I think when I was younger, Nolan and Goldie took a lot of that on themselves, and they took it on the chin and didn't really have anybody to kind of look around and take any of the blame. And that's my fault. I didn't step up earlier, whatever it was. I just think that they had to do it. That was kind of the part of their role. But I think now I'm going to be okay doing it, obviously taking that fall. But it's just, I think it will be me. It'll also be Mason. It might be Pedro or Donnie or Burley or whoever. It's just, I think as a group, we can kind of take pride in the praises, but also the falls, so we can kind of grow together, which will be good or maybe bad. Who knows?
Something that I do like about this, Alex, is that they've got a group now that's taking that on. It's not one guy. It's not two players that are at the front of everything where it was Goldie and Arenado, Goldie Arenado, Goldie Arenado. After every game, T-Bone, you remember going out there. Cardinals lose a game, guess who's talking? Goldie and Arenado. Cardinals win a game, guess who's talking? Goldie and Arenado, and a couple of other guys suddenly are emerging. Brendan Donovan's really good about this. I think Mason Wynn last year became really good about this as well, but I do think it is something, and it's a small thing that I don't think a lot of fans really care about, but as a player, it's just annoying. Man, we just lost 5-4 on a walk-off, and I've got to answer questions about the ball that I booted, right? But it's part of the job. The Blues have this inside of their locker room. You know who's going to talk after games because it's up on a board somewhere, right? Like, it is just part of the small things that make a clubhouse work. And for the Cardinals, it's been Goldie and Arenado's clubhouse in recent seasons. Before that, it was, you'd have Waino and you'd have Yachty, and these guys they're the ones that are at the front of everything, and they control what the vibe is inside of that clubhouse. There's not that anymore. There's no more, hopefully, depending on what happens with Nolan Arenado, let's assume that he gets traded at some point before spring training. There's no more fail-safe there of, Arenado's got that. He'll take care of that. I think the Blues had this with Ryan O'Reilly. He'll talk. He'll take care of that. Or before that, Petro. He's got that. At a certain point in time, the young guys have to take over. And they've got to be willing to take on whatever responsibility comes with that. And it's potentially a lot. But I like that Nootbaar said, hey, some days it's going to be me. Some days it's going to be Mason. Some days it's going to be Burleson. Other days, maybe it's going to be Donovan. And they've got 4 or 5 guys that can take that on together. And I think when you spread out some of those responsibilities, especially in a market like St. Louis, where no, it's not New York, it's not Philadelphia, where it's a really harsh media market. It is covered, though, in a way that it's not in very many places. I think that's something that could potentially benefit them next year.
This is in my opinion, biggest step that needs to be taken for a team to jumpstart this renewal or whatever the Cardinals are using for today. Frankly, the Cardinals they've had this safety blanket for a really long time. You think about it, from Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina to Matt Holliday and Yadier Molina, and then you've got just Yadier Molina, then Adam Wainwright, then Nolan Arenado, then Paul Goldschmidt. It's never had to be about the younger players because they've always got the veterans to take care of it. And although that can be a good thing, to keep some of those younger guys in the shadows so that they can develop on their own and not handle that adversity, if you're going to play for this team in this market, you're going to have to be able to handle that adversity. And frankly, that's what the development is going to have to be for some of these guys, specifically the trio that we're talking about being the next big thing for the Cardinals. Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman. And I know Lars Nootbaar was the one that's talking. Brendan Donovan's in this group as well. But to get to the next level, yeah, you got to figure out how to play at the major leagues, but you're going to have to figure out how to handle this. And I like the fact that the Cardinals are kind of just throwing this right into it. They're doing it cold turkey rather than the slow transition of it all, because this is the one thing that could threaten this season for the Cardinals. If some of these guys can't handle that, you're going to have to take that into consideration with the development.
And there's added pressure. We talked to Matt Carpenter, was this last year when he signed with the team, and he's like, hey, listen, I get it. I understand those responsibilities and what that can be like as the guy, and it's a lot to take on. He said it got to him at times when he was here in St. Louis earlier in his career. And so it was one of the reasons why the Cardinals wanted to bring Matt Carpenter in, according to him, is, hey, we need somebody else that can kind of take this on and take this load off of Goldie and Arenado. Well, if those guys aren't here, now that load falls on the young players for the most part. And Wilson Contreras, by the way, will still be a part of this as well. Like, it's not all young players on this team. It is mostly younger guys. But there are still some veterans around that can help in this regard. I found it really interesting as Nootbaar was talking about it. It's clearly something he's thought about. Brendan Donovan brought this up as well, like the leadership that he can potentially bring. And he was talking about how he wants to gain the respect of the guys in the locker room first, so then he can be somebody that leads. It's like, dude, Don, I think you've gained that respect. I think people in that locker room are familiar with what you do and the work that you put in. But I think he's got a lot of the Paul Goldschmidt stuff in terms of the lead by example. But my understanding, at least, is that Donnie comes with a little bit more in terms of the vocal presence inside of that clubhouse. So it'll be interesting to see the form that takes this year and if that matters at all. I know, T-Bone, you're very skeptical of this stuff, as am I, generally speaking. But while I don't put a ton of value on it, it is something that matters. How much? Hard to say. It's impossible to quantify. But it is something that matters to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree, but what'll come down to winning and losing is what they do on the baseball
100%.
field. And none of that will be affected by what they do in the locker room.
That's where I disagree. I think it can affect the mindset. I think if you come into a show and you're just in a crap mood, that affects the overall show that we put on.
Why'd you
every
look
day,
at me
right?
when you said that, man?
Like, I was thinking of him and his tone problem.
That's
back-to-back days,
to
too.
be fair. If you're in any company, any business, your workplace environment affects the overall productivity that you have on that day, right? I think the same is true, especially in baseball, where it is such a mental game. And if you don't have the right mentality going out onto the baseball field and you're just feeling like, man, this sucks. Like, I got this clubhouse that I hate everybody in here. None of us get along. Like that can affect things. How much? We can have a conversation there on how much it affects things. But I do think your mental fragility, I guess it would be the way that I would describe it. I think that affects things. You disagree with that?
I think most of it comes from are you winning and losing on the baseball field, right? Like, are you having more? Like, we've been in that locker room. I mean, 2022 was a blast.
Yeah, but you don't think mentality ruins
I think mentality
a locker room?
comes from. I think mentality that goes into a locker room comes from what's happening on a baseball field.
But even if you hate the other guy next to you?
Yeah, we've seen players don't get along, and they can make it work if they're winning, right?
I
Winning
think we've also
determines
seen
everything.
clubhouses where a rotten culture can just permeate through everything, and you have no chance to win because of it.
I mean, I don't know that their locker culture was great last year, and they finished above 500.
I think the locker room culture was pretty good last year. I think 2 years ago was pretty bad.
Fair, but I think that was a talent issue. Like, I think what happened was, like, people got along, and I'm just going to use his name. I don't know if he was really a locker room problem or not, but until we all pointed the finger at was Jack Flaherty, right?
I threw his catcher under the bus, so.
Yeah, I
think Tyler O'Neill.
O'Neill too. But you could work with those guys, right? Like the Cardinals worked with those guys when they were what? Winning. That's where it's determined, right? And you can hate somebody, like you even like if you're thinking like at your working world. You know what? You may not even like the guy at the cubicle next to you.
Sure.
That guy's a total a-hole. You know what? We're making money as a company. I can deal with that guy. And that's where I just disagree with the notion of, well, if they had this great locker room, everything's going to be fine. Even if they lose 90 games, Walker didn't develop at all.
I've had bosses that, for whatever reason, just didn't align with the kind of radio that I want to do. And you do your best work that you can, right? But we talked about this with Monty. Monty had a really good interview yesterday on the Fast Lane, and I cannot recommend it enough to anybody that missed it yesterday. Go over to the podcast page and check that out. he talked about Matthew Joseph coming to him and saying, hey, I think you're missing something here. And Monty was like, what's going on? It's like, I think I can help you on the penalty kill. And Monty said, he openly said this on the air yesterday, is like, I didn't agree with him. I wasn't necessarily sure that that was the right thing for us. However, I want this to be something where we instill that ability in our players to come to us and feel like they're a part of it. So we trusted him and we went with it and we gave it a shot, and he was right. He's like, I was wrong. Matthew Joseph was right. He has helped us. He has really made our penalty kill better. And we just looked this up. Yep. He has not been on the ice for a goal against on the PK since he's returned to the lineup.
And the team is 6 for 8 since he's returned to the lineup on the penalty kill.
And when he's out there, 8 for 8.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? So it has worked. And the reason why I bring that up as an example of this is because I do think whether it's leadership inside of the clubhouse or your direct person that you report to, being your manager or your coach, when they have that kind of a relationship with you, it gets a little more out of you. And I think that is something that matters. Again, the degree to which it matters, I don't know. I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on it, but it definitely matters to some degree. And I think that's something that hopefully will help them this year.
And honestly, I think, T-Bone, it's kind of the chicken or the egg conversation, like which came first. Like, you're right. Totally. Like, if you don't believe in the mentality, it comes to winning and losing. But for the people that believe in, like, mentality-wise, winning and losing happens if you're in the right mindset. And I know it can happen if you're losing, but if you're winning, you could still be pissed off at the guy next to you that could create a bad culture, and then losing takes place.
And where I come from is everything seems great about their dynamic right now, right? Absolutely. And they're not even technically in a locker room now, but like they're clearly talking with each other. Like, we heard Newbar was in, I think it was Newbar was at Gorman's wedding this past offseason. So there is a camaraderie. Everything sounds fine and dandy. It's not going to sound that way if they start the season 10-20, right? And we can point back at this moment now and say, well, they had good camaraderie. What happened? You know, they had this. I do agree to an extent of, hey, well, there was a idea of these guys really liked each other. It's going to help them get a little bit more out of them. What it just comes down to is wins and losses. We can talk about all we want about locker rooms. We can talk about them. Oh, well, this one's really good. Well, they're winning. Okay. I've never heard someone say this locker room is great and they're losing. Like, we thought the Blues improved their locker room last year, and then halfway through the season we said, "Ooh, that locker room can't be good." No, they were losing. They were a losing hockey team last year. That's why people believe that they didn't have a good locker room camaraderie. I screwed that up, but
camaraderie. You got it, man.
I also think they didn't have a very good locker room, but again, that's another conversation.
It's a chicken or the egg conversation, and we all know that the chicken came first.
I think the egg came first.
Son of a...
My final thing that I want to get on this, the reason why I think it could potentially matter is because I agree with you, T-Bone, as that losing starts to snowball and you get into those cycles, I think there are times where it implodes. And that's when you really find out what your locker room culture is. And why I think last year is potentially illuminating on this, they had that last year, and it didn't snowball on them. They ended up going through a losing effort early on in the season, and they kept things on the rails, man. It's not a season any of us are going to write home about or get excited about. But they did win 83 games. They avoided the disastrous outcome from 2 years ago. And I do think some of that is because those guys were still bought in and they were still all pulling in the same direction. Whereas 2 years ago, I think they dropped the rope and said, every man for himself. This sucks. It's brutal. Nobody enjoys being here right now. Pointing fingers inside of the clubhouse. It was a disaster on every possible level. My hope is this year, because they're going to go through some rough times. They're too young to not have those where it's like a 6-game losing streak and you got to pull yourself out of it. What ends up happening then? Do you go through a 10-game losing streak where you just season over right then and there? Or are you able to pull yourself out of it and potentially get back on track? I think that's where you see the locker room culture. That's where you see some of this stuff come through. We'll see. All right, he's Alex's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, let's play a game of more likely to happen. You guys give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, this is the time of the year that I love betting on the exact result for the Super Bowl. Not just one team to win it, but to beat a certain team. So when you go over to the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois, this is something they've got available for you. NFL Championship Exacta is what they call it. It's a tab under there. So you can bet on, for example, the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Commanders in the Super Bowl. It's 8-1 odds over on Circa. If you made that exact same bet over on FanDuel, plus 750. Here's another example for you. The Chiefs to beat the Eagles, plus 360 over on the Circa Sports, or excuse me, plus 380 on Circa, plus 360 over on FanDuel. You're getting the best odds. You're winning the most money possible when you bet on Circa.
They're transparent about it. They tell you to go compare the lines over at different sports books. They're so confident that you're going to be coming back so that you can get the most money possible. Circa is keeping as little money on those large market bets. You know, those big parlays that Ferrario loves, tight money line splits, whatever it is, Circa has you taken care of. And it's real people that you're talking to with their customer service if you ever have any issues. So download the Circa Sports Illinois app today for all of your sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. For more likely to happen, you give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. Were you guys selected for the Savannah Bananas tickets?
What are you bleeping talking about?
I have no idea. I know that my dad put in for that. I have no idea if it won or not.
Is this a work thing, or is this just like I didn't even enter this?
The verification deadline is coming up in a couple of days. I've been selected to be in the running for tickets to the Savannah Bananas that's coming to St. Louis.
This is a serious question. Do you really want to go see the Savannah Bananas?
I can't tell you how much I want to go see the Savannah Bananas.
Why?
Absolutely. It's baseball and a show basically in one. What is there not to enjoy or be excited about with the Savannah Bananas?
So you want to go see these baseball players in their uniforms dancing and then hit a ball.
Yeah, it's like going to the Harlem Globetrotters stuff.
Aren't you a Globetrotter fan?
I went to the Globetrotters when I was 10, and it was fun, and I don't think I ever needed to really go again.
I'm genuinely excited about this.
Okay. Hey, man. There's no judging here.
Almost.
Okay, that's a little weird.
I just saw that somebody in the YouTube chat mentioned that they had sent out the email for those that are going to be selected that won the lottery process. I won the lottery, boys.
Good for you.
Man, if that's the lottery.
I wanted to see him just because I could care. I'm trying to think of the best way to frame this. I don't know if I'm really excited about the Savannah Bananas, but it's become such a big thing that I feel like I have to see it.
Oh, see,
it's almost like the Taylor Swift concert where it's like, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, but if I had been able to get tickets at a reasonable rate to go to the Eras Tour, I absolutely would have gone.
This is the polar opposite of me. People that want to go to this and feel like they have to, I'm the complete opposite direction.
You have no fear of missing out?
No. I have no FOMO.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially this. I see the highlights. I see the clips. I'm good. I get the taste of Savannah Bananas. It's awesome what they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discounting anything. I just don't need to be in attendance for it.
That's something that I'm really excited about.
I'll drink a beer watching the highlights on my phone, and then we'll be good.
I'm excited about it. I'll take a little man there. We'll hang out together. It'll be a good time.
You going to drink while you're there?
Absolutely. Kara's going to be the sober driver.
Yeah, there you go. Nice.
Everybody is giddy about this too.
It's a huge deal, man. Them coming to St. Louis is a really, really big deal. So we put in for multiple lotteries. So I was the St. Louis one. Kara did, I think, Louisville. I had a brother-in-law that did, I think, Chicago or something. We did a lottery for all of the closest spots that we could potentially see them, and we ended up. This was the only one that we got. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Good for you, man.
We did one in KC, I think.
I don't. They're going to KC. They're going to KC. I didn't know they were going to KC.
I don't kink shame, so I'm glad that you got this.
All right. Well, here we go. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service X line for more likely to happen. You guys give us a scenario, and we will tell you which one is more likely. Alex, more likely to happen, the Commanders win the Super Bowl or the Eagles win the Super Bowl?
Oh, Commanders win the Super Bowl. I had to think about that for 10 seconds. Commanders. I don't see an opportunity for the Eagles. Frankly, I don't think either of those teams are going to win. I think it's going to be the Chiefs or the Bills. But if I had to give one team a shot, I'll go with the team that's got the quarterback and Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts.
I'm going to say more likely Eagles. I think you've got to have a great defense to win the Super Bowl, and I don't buy into the Commanders' defense. They definitely got the better quarterback, but I think the Eagles have the all-around better roster and the better defense.
I think it's the Commanders. And the reason why is just their formula to be able to win, there's only one, and it's just winning in shootouts all year long. I think that at least that gives you a chance against one of the Bills or the Chiefs. I don't think it will work. I don't see any way that the Eagles beat those teams, man. Like, what's the formula for the Eagles to go out there and beat the Bills or the Chiefs?
Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, but I just saw that with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson against the Bills. It didn't work.
Yeah, because it's not defense against those teams.
And if you give me the opportunity to see Steve Spagnuolo for 2 weeks put together a game plan where all he knows he's got to do is take away Saquon Barkley, that dude can take away one guy. I've seen that many a times in the postseason. I don't think they have a chance.
And if you're the Eagles against the Bills, because I can hear the argument for the Eagles finding a way to stop the defense or to stop the offense from Mahomes because he struggled. If you're taking on the Bills, good luck. I mean, they've got 7 different weapons that they can go at you with, and I don't know how good that defense can be against Buffalo.
Alex, what do you got for us?
More likely to happen, fellas. Jim Montgomery reunites Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas, and they go on a hot streak, or those two don't play together the rest of the season.
Oh, the latter. Or the former, excuse me. I think they'll get together at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
They're too good not to.
I agree. They're going to end up being paired back together, and they'll probably go on a hot streak. Like, as many questions as I have about Booch's game right now, I can still see where he's going to have a hot streak. Every player goes on a hot streak. So
I just had a light bulb. Can I do one more, please? More likely to happen next year. Pavel Buchnevich scores 30-plus goals. Robert Thomas hits 100 points. Let's say 90 points because 100 points is a lot. We'll go 90 points for Robert Thomas.
I'll say Thomas.
Well, say with your chest over there.
Well, the only reason, nobody's done it since like the 90s.
I'll say 90 plus.
Yeah,
and the reason why is because you potentially, at least, have a goal scorer up there with Snuggerud. So I'll say 90 plus.
I'll go Booch 30 goals. I think Thomas is going to end up being just the 80 to 90 range. I don't know if he's going to get to that next level.
People are going to find themselves disappointed by that, Alex?
No, because if you give me 90 points from Robert Thomas consistently, I am all in on that.
What if it's closer to like 80 to 85?
Are you one of the better defensive forwards or centers? Because then you're Ryan O'Reilly.
I like offense more, though.
I don't think he's ever in that Ryan O'Reilly category defensively. Personally, I'm also the guy, though, that has said, people are going to get mad at this. I think some of his defense has been a little overstated.
Who, O'Reilly's?
No, God, no.
Oh, so what the
Thomas.
hell are you talking about, man? Last year, I don't think it was. Last year, I thought he played well.
But I thought that was really the only time that we've seen it from him.
But, he did it under Bannister.
Yeah.
And if you can do it under... That was so Tony, and I am so sorry. That's not what I mean. You did that under Drew Bannister.
Bannister should be back.
Who was unfamiliar with the NHL level. Jim Montgomery has coached.
Unbelievable.
Jim Montgomery has coached some of the best defensive forwards in the NHL, and I think you can hit the next level with that. And if you're telling me that you're a Selke Trophy conversation with 85 points, I'll take that any day of the week. That sounded so Tony. And Drew Bannister, if you or your family are listening, I apologize to that statement.
T-Bone, what do you got for us?
I love you, Drew. More likely to happen. Will Contreras finish his top 10 in MVP voting this year, or Sonny Gray finishes top 10 in Cy Young voting?
I'm going to say Wilson Contreras finishes top 10 MVP. It's got to come down to health. I don't know if Sonny Gray is going to be as elite as he was last year.
Sonny. I think people are sleeping on how good Sonny could potentially be once again this year, because I think people sleep on how good Sonny Gray was last year.
I think you fell for the milks from the cow.
Dude,
at the winter warm-up.
Sonny Gray, I'm not. This has nothing to do with anything Sonny Gray said at winter warm-up. And it has, nobody really talked about Sonny, honestly, at winter warm-ups. It was all about the young guys. Sonny was awesome last year, man. He did not go as deep into games as I think everybody would have liked.
Too hot.
Totally get that. And it can be frustrating sometimes when you see that in the moment. The guy still had one of the best strikeout rates in all of Major League Baseball, including the second best strikeout rate of his Major League career. He doesn't walk anybody. He legitimately takes it personally when he walks anybody. He got legit unlucky last year and was still really, really good.
He got unlucky last year with a Gold Glove-esque first and third baseman.
Fair.
I don't know. And an outfield that was good defensively. Does your good luck continue into or bad luck get over? Are you going to have that bad luck next season?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty decent chance that he has a better year this year than he had last year. And if he does, I think he will be a top 10 Cy Young award.
I would take the under on that.
I think he'll have a good year this year, and maybe even better than last year. I'm going to say more likely, though, Contreras is top 10 MVP. And that's not really a shot at Sonny, because I do kind of agree that I think Sonny's going to have a better standard number season. In other words, like ERA, wins, stuff like that, innings pitched, honestly, because I think he'll be healthy for the full year. The reason I say that about Contreras is if Contreras is healthy, holy crap, this guy can mash. He's had 3 straight seasons with an OPS over 800, and by the way, in all 3 of those years, it's just gone up. So I think Contreras, if he stays healthy at first base, I think he's going to put up the offensive numbers. I think he'll creep his way into the top 10 of the MVP voting.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you which one is more likely. We'll get to a few of these quick hitter style, all right? From the 314, more likely to happen. David Perron or Ryan O'Reilly return to the Blues?
Ooh, Ryan O'Reilly. I think this is the last this will be the last contract for David Perron. He's been going through a lot of personal stuff with his family and his newborn. He's only played 9 games this season. I think he's coming back for this upcoming game for the Ottawa Senators. 36 years old. He's got 1 more year on his contract. This will be the last contract for David Perron. Now, does he come back and sign a 1-day deal with the Blues? Maybe. But if you're telling me more likely a player, Ryan O'Reilly.
I'd go O'Reilly as well. I can see where they bring him in as the third-line center. He would fit perfectly on this team.
Sweep it. More likely to happen. The Blues add a top 6 winger or a center at the deadline. Swinner.
Swinger?
A swinner.
You don't want to put a swinner on there. I'm going to say winger. I don't think they go after a centerman. I think they're fine with Braden Chen. That line is basically playing like their top line. Would they like to have a third-line center instead of Oscar Sundqvist? Probably, but I think that's going to be Dvorsky at some point. If they're making a push, it's going to be a winger to play in your top 6 with Robert Thomas.
I so want to agree. I think I'm going to lean center, though. I think they're going to look to upgrade that third-line center spot because I think they're going to convince themselves Snuggerud can fix the wing spot.
That's where I'm at. Not the Snuggerud part.
But I agree that I would go the winger, though.
The third-line center is a clear spot of weakness right now for this team. Oscar Sundqvist, God bless him. We love the guy, but he's not a third-line center. He's not a third-line player at this point in his career. He's too slow. We've seen some of the turnovers in his own name this year.
Let's start attacking
again.
the guy.
I like Oscar Sundqvist, but he's not he's not the answer.
That's like saying no offense, but you're ugly. It doesn't matter.
I love Sonny. He's not a third-line center. It's okay.
It's not you.
Here's what it is.
That line, PTSD from high school.
All right, last one here from the 314. More likely to happen,
Jennifer.
Mizzou basketball makes the Final Four or Mizzou football makes the Final Four in the next 3 years.
Can I say neither in this?
I mean, that's the most likely scenario.
If I had to pick one, I'll say
more likely, not most likely.
Tone. If I had to pick one, I'll say Mizzou basketball. Because I think there's more of an opportunity to get there with luck rather than college football.
Football next year. Book it.
What? You guys aren't even getting past the Illini.
Couldn't even say that without laughing.
That Illini team's trash.
No, man.
That'll be good. They'll win 9 games.
Funny thing is,
9. They better put a banner if they win 9.
I would go Mizzou basketball in this. I don't know if it'd be this year's team, but man, this year's team is fun to watch outside last night. That game was awful.
Set that aside. I told you guys yesterday, bad spot for them.
That game was boring.
Very. But they are typically a really good offensive team. And if they can put up 70, 80 points a game, yeah, you can go on a run in the NCAA tournament and surprise people and get to the Final Four.
Alongside T-Bone and Alex, I'm BK. Alex, do we have...
I've not heard from Lou. I think Lou Korac's going to come on with us, but he's in the locker room right now with the players, so hopefully we'll hear from him shortly.
So instead of that, we're going to talk about Ben Johnson and the sliding doors moment in the NFL.
Please.
Next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as they host the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. And if you missed the news, according to our Blues insider Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, Phil Broberg went down in practice today. Looked like no weight on his right leg as he was helped off the ice. Jim Montgomery said he is being evaluated, and they'll know more tomorrow. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CDMLondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, with Alex and T-Bone on BK, we do have a little bit of news to pass along in the NFL. We'll get to the Ben Johnson sliding doors moment here in just a second. But the Jets have a deal in place, according to Ian Rappaport, for Aaron Glenn to be their next head coach. The former New York Jets first rounder is going to land with his old team. So he is going to be the next head coach of the Jets. Previously, of course, was the defensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. So they are now losing, Alex, their defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, as expected, with Ben Johnson, the OC, taking the job in Chicago. We all thought that this would be the case, but now it's official. They're going to lose both coordinators after they had a really disappointing end of their season. Like, the Lions are a really feel-good story. That changes if that was the pinnacle. If we end up coming back and we're like, hey, man, remember that year that the Detroit Lions had the #1 seed? You had two of the hot shot candidates in the NFL when it came to coaching cycles, and Jared Goff was playing so well. The defense was outperforming expectations despite all of the injuries on that side. If this is as good as it gets for Detroit, it will be looked at as not a failure, I don't think, but definitely disappointing relative to what expectations were as they started to grow this thing.
I totally agree, but I'm also going to give Dan Campbell the benefit of the doubt in terms of identifying talent, and I think that he was able to see the upside with both of these coordinators. And before I sit there and say this might be the end of the Detroit Lions, they've got all the talent in the world. It's just going to come down to, does Dan Campbell bring in the right guy? And you're right, this has gone poorly in the past, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt first time to find out if you can identify more talent like you did with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn.
He found the right guys. He hired Anthony Lynn as his first offensive coordinator in Detroit. Now they decided to go a different direction after year one, and Ben Johnson was put in place, and we saw how quickly this all came together after that. I don't know what their plan is going to be there, man. We talked about this with the New England Patriots. There just aren't a ton of great candidates out there available right now. And that's, I think, part of why it was so critical for a team like the Bears to get Ben Johnson is, and it's hard to find the replacement for your OC.
Yeah.
It's why Josh McDaniels is once again back in New England. I don't think this is like the thing that's going to tear the Detroit Lions apart. I think they're going to be a good team next year. The ceiling, though, I think goes down a little bit.
I agree.
I think people underestimate how important it is to have that guy. It's why it's so big that the Bears got Ben Johnson to begin with. Because when that guy walks out your door or walks in the door, stuff gets fixed pretty quickly. And when your quarterback, specifically a guy like Jared Goff, has to learn a new system, a lot of the times there are, a 1-year growing period where it takes a little bit to be able to acclimate yourself to whatever that new system is. Or when you have a guy that was an assistant, I don't know what the direction's going to be, but if it's an assistant that was there under Ben Johnson that gets promoted now, sometimes it feels like the same thing, but there's a little something missing, whether that's timing of the specific play calls or building on play calls over the course of the season. It just changes a little bit, and you get a watered-down version of what the old product used to be. So this is why this year, I said it going into the divisional round, the team that might have had the most pressure on them to get it this season was the Detroit Lions. It was going to be hard to do because of all the injuries on the defensive side of the ball. That's why I picked the Commanders last week. But, man, this is a potential sliding doors moment in the NFL, both for the Bears, who got the offensive guy that they've been looking for 20 years, and also for the Detroit Lions, because not only is Ben Johnson walking out the door, but the guy that put together a hell of a defensive game plan despite all of the injuries, he's walking out as well.
And you get the double whammy from both of those perspectives, right? So not only did Ben Johnson walk out the door and get replaced him, he walked out the door into the division with the Chicago Bears.
Yep.
And then the defensive coordinator one, Aaron Glenn, walked out the door. Guys, there were like two decent coordinators that were going to be available this offseason, Lou Amarillo and I can't remember who the other one was. There was one more I had in my head a second ago. Former head coach that was Dennis Allen, who just signed with the Indianapolis Colts.
Al Golden, the former Notre Dame defensive coordinator, I believe is going to be the next defense coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. So, like, there were three, if you look at that Notre Dame game as well, as, like, decent candidates. But the Lions can't go out there and hire those guys because they were in the playoffs, right? They still had Aaron Glenn. They still had to operate like they were going to have Aaron Glenn next year. And now you're kind of late to this process of getting involved in the defensive coordinator hire, and we'll see where they go. My guess is they'll probably just go internally. But you got the double whammy from both of those perspectives. Because I'm with you. It was the most pressure the Lions were going to have at this point in this cycle that they are on to try and win now. And I don't think it becomes a failure, but it does become a major disappointment. And the reason it's not a failure is just because they dealt with so many injuries. Like, it was going to be hard for Aaron Glenn to get that defense to the Super Bowl.
So Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports just tweeted this out. The last team to lose both of their coordinators in one offseason to head coaching jobs was the Eagles in 2023.
It didn't go
when
well.
they lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. They ended up taking the jobs in Arizona and Indianapolis, respectively.
They also had a terrible head coach.
I think that's probably true. But at the time, we viewed him as a head coach that could keep things together, right? Like, while we all kind of viewed him as a weirdo, we also saw it and it's like, hey, man, Nick Sirianni took him to the Super Bowl, so maybe he's not as bad as we all think he is from the outside. And they seem to like him, and his personality kind of played with Philadelphia because he's this tough guy, right? So even if we all thought, this guy's a weirdo, man, I don't know if this is going to play, it worked. And then he lost his coordinators, and it stopped working. I think Dan Campbell's a really good head coach. Some of what he does is like he's the rah-rah guy, and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn take care of the X's and O's stuff for him, right? He's a true CEO type. What does that look like when you lose those coordinators? I don't know. I'm genuinely interested to find out.
And if you're that true CEO type, you know what the main role of a CEO is? To find the right guys that can manage the business. And that's honestly, we're talking about the pressure on the Detroit Lions. Pressure's on Dan Campbell. Because if Dan Campbell makes the wrong decision, he becomes Nick Sirianni. And then it's like, what is this guy doing? You go forward on fourth down. You don't know what the plays are. These coordinators you got are terrible. Where are you going with this, man? And that could be the downfall of Dan Campbell.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see which direction they end up going. Somebody on the text line said, guys, they'll just promote from within. Position coaches will become coordinators, and they'll have the culture to keep it rolling. We'll see. I've heard that before. And you hire the next guy, and you think that he's going to be every bit as good as the last guy was, and then you realize, oh, no, they're not. They're not as good.
No, not so much.
That's what Philly did. I think they hired a guy internally for the DC job, and then halfway through the year,
OC job.
they
hired a guy internally for the offense coordinator job as well, and they were like, this isn't working, and they went with Kellen Moore instead. This year, they fixed both of those coordinator jobs, and that's why they're having success again, because they went to Miami and got Vic Fangio. They went to Dallas and got Kellen Moore. And now you look at what they have in place, and it's like, oh, okay, it got fixed. So Dan Campbell might get it wrong this time and then fix it after a year, the way that he did with his offensive coordinator with Anthony Lynn, where he hired Lynn and then fixed it in year 2 with Ben Johnson. And then that stayed in place for the next few seasons. But if they get it wrong for this upcoming season, why there's so much pressure, to your point, Alex, on Dan Campbell, now you're another year into this window of not being able to take advantage.
Yep.
Yeah.
And things get expensive quickly, man. They've got a ton of cap space for this offseason. And I've seen a lot of people reference that, and they're like, oh, the Lions are set up for years to come. Yeah, go ahead and click that next tab of what the following offseason looks like in terms of their cap space currently. It doesn't look quite the same, because a lot of these contracts kick into place not next year, but the year after, where they get like this bloated number. Year 1 of extensions are almost always a really low number on the cap. Year 2 is when they start to get significantly higher. And then you start getting into the spot of, okay, now we got to re-sign Aiden Hutchinson. Now we got to start talking about re-signing Jameson Williams. We're going to start about talking to Jahmyr Gibbs. And now you start talking about adding in something on the defensive side of the ball as well, which they kind of need to do. It gets very expensive very quickly. And then the Lions, as we know them, aren't quite the same Lions as we currently know them.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
They're a fun team. I really want the Lions to get theirs.
This is coming from
might have ended up being the year.
This is coming from a Jordan Love honk. What does he know? Right?
Who wins more games next year, the Lions or the Bears?
I'm going to say the Lions.
Yeah.
Experience over inexperience.
I'm still going to go Lions as well.
I think that's where I'm at as well. 2 years from now, who wins more games, Bears or Lions?
Lions.
Yeah, there you go, T-Bone. Now you're starting to see it.
That'll be one of
I'll say this. The NFC is going to be the most interesting conference of the two next year.
Even though I don't think it's got, like, the best teams in football.
Yeah, more interesting because there's more storylines. Still not better.
Yeah, I agree.
Chiefs, Ravens,
Bills.
Bengals, Bills.
I'm done talking Ravens. We're done with the Ravens.
Yeah, but they're still
It'll be
good.
fun in the regular season.
No, they're not fun in the regular
If you
season.
flipped the Ravens to the NFC, the Ravens would be my favorite to get out of the NFC.
Sure,
next year.
but then I got to deal with everybody when I tell them for 17 weeks that the Ravens are fun in the regular season, but they suck in the postseason. You don't know football, Alex. They'll be fine.
Those guys are right.
always
He's Alex's
right.
Didn't you
T-Bone
pick the Lions
MBK.
this past week?
Huh?
Didn't you pick the Lions
Absolutely,
this
I
past
did.
week? Yeah, see? You don't know football, Ferrario.
Yeah, you're right. You right, dog. You right.
Some over here
Yeah.
have only missed one game so far.
Thanks, man.
Stop
One
acting
game.
like the Commanders. You were all on board with it. You jumped off that boat before it even sank on
I
Friday.
said this is very unlikely given the spread and how few times this has happened in the past, but I'm still picking them. I picked the Commanders.
you
We
yelled-
bet on the Commanders.
You yelled iceberg before you even saw an iceberg, man.
As you know, a lot of it is underneath the water, not just on top of it.
Yeah, so they say on the Titanic.
The junk show is next. We're going to be joined by Lou Korac of NHL.com here in just a little bit. Lou was out of practice today where Phil Broberg went down. Apparently a leg issue for him. We'll see what the severity is, but we want to talk to Lou about what he saw, what he's expecting as Phil Broberg goes down again earlier today at Blues practice with yet another right leg issue. So we'll talk to him here in just a little bit for the full updates on that. All right, Alex, for the junk drawer today. I got yelled at yesterday.
Oh, yes.
So we're going on a cruise here in about a week. And my wife asked me yesterday, she was like, hey, we got to get some sunscreen. I was like, sunscreen for what? She's like, for the cruise. Why do we need sunscreen for the cruise?
Well,
it's going to be like 70 degrees on this cruise. I'm not exactly planning to be, in the same situation as I would be in Cancun. Well, if it's like 90 degrees outside, yeah, I'm going to lather myself in some sunscreen, right?
Well, you can get burned by the sun.
That's what she said. If you guys went on a cruise or you were going to, a nicer place than where we're at right now weather-wise, at what point do you start putting sunscreen on?
Well, I never put sunscreen on.
Oh, okay, thank you.
My wife hates me because every single time we're like out, she's like, we put sunscreen on. I don't want you to get skin cancer. I'm like, nah, I'm Italian. I don't burn. I tan.
Yep.
And then when I'm burning and I'm complaining about it, she has to listen to it. But
Correct.
I never put sunscreen on. Now, if you're asking her, whenever the sun is out, probably about 70 degrees or more. When the sun is beating down, she's going to put it on our girls.
Yeah, she told me, she looked at me, she was like, listen, it's going to be sunny out. I was like, yeah, it's going to be sunny and 70 as the high. I think I'm good.
I think you're good too.
I feel like if you start sweating when you go outside, that's when I think it's time to put on some sunscreen. Now, is that scientifically the correct way to look at it?
No.
No, of course not.
No.
But I'm an idiot, and this is the way that I view things in my life.
Yeah.
The three of us all are all in agreement where it's like, yeah, I never put sunscreen on. So, yeah, we're clearly not the people for the scientific
I think that's
theory
a
on
guy
it.
thing, though. Like, I don't...
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking for all of them, but like all of my buddies, my guy friends, they never put sunscreen on. Yeah. And I got to do one of my best friends is like Polish descent. So he goes outside, that white burns quick.
Sure.
And never does it.
I think 80 degrees or higher.
I'd agree.
I'm starting to get into the mode of like, all right, time to put some sunscreen on out here, right? I have no issue. I will put on sunscreen. I've got no issues with it. But if I don't feel like I need to put on sunscreen, I'm probably not going to put on sunscreen. Will I get a little burnt on this trip? Maybe. I can't imagine overly so. I'm really excited to come back looking like a tomato.
Oh yeah, I think mine isn't a temperature. It's if I'm putting swim trunks on. If I have swim trunks on, I'll put or at least somebody will tell me to put it on.
I mean, we're on a cruise, right? So there's like the boat or the pool deck. So we'll probably go over to the pool occasionally. But
yeah,
all I heard in this segment was BK almost. He didn't say it. But when he just said, like when I feel like it, it felt very much like, I'm just not going to put it on because Carol wants me to put it on. I'm not going to do it. That's
Genuinely,
what I got.
I am a little stubborn. I'm not that stubborn. If I feel like I need to put on sunscreen, I'll put on sunscreen. I don't feel like in this scenario it's necessary or warranted.
I put it on after I've already burned. And then my wife's like, will you please put it on? And I'm like, well, it won't do anything now.
We're bringing it. I'll report back. I'll let you guys know.
We're bringing it.
As you can imagine, I didn't have much say in that.
Yeah, you'll be wearing it. I get it.
Somebody said this feels like an Aaron Rodgers type of a take. I did feel that way as I was arguing my side yesterday, where I was like, man,
if I'm not sweating, I ain't putting it on.
I need to look in the mirror. And she was like, is there any science behind anything that you're saying? I was like, yeah. RFK Jr. probably would agree with everything I'm saying right now.
No.
Coming up next.
His thoughts do not mimic the thoughts of the show. That is a BK comment.
Oh, son of a...
Damn it, man. Stop it.
I should have dumped that.
Coming up next.
Should dump him.
We'll ask Lou Korac for his thoughts on sunscreen and Broberg's leg next here on 101 ESPN. Alex, when we saw the news from Lou Korac that Philip Broberg took a spill in a drill, hobbled off the ice, putting very little weight on his right leg, we all had a little bit of a gasp in this room. It was then updated. Jim Montgomery says that Broberg is being evaluated. No further information until tomorrow. And so we decided, okay, we got to give Lou Korac a call. We got to find out exactly what happened here, get the update for the people out there of St. Louis. And he joins us now via the Callier and Thompson hotline. You can, of course, find Lou Korac on Twitter at LKorac10. He covers the St. Louis Blues for NHL.com. Lou, we appreciate the time as always, man. What'd you see? What's the latest with Philip Broberg?
Well, not something that we were expecting. It looked harmless and innocent enough, guys. It was just a simple drill at the end of practice, puck moving up, and, you know, you got the boards there, so you guys know where, Alex, especially you know where we sit there. And it didn't appear that he took a stick to the skate blade, so it looked to me like he lost an edge, and he just, like, slid into the boards, and it wasn't one of those where he, like, you know, crashed into the boards and you thought, you know, next thing you know, the glass was going to shatter in your face. So I'm thinking, all right, no big deal. He's going to be all right. And then he's laying there on the ice, and the trainers didn't jump out immediately either, because I don't think anybody was expecting this to be one of those where, hey, he's not getting up. But then all of a sudden, yeah, it was like, hey, he's not getting up. And they got him up on his skates. And again, you know, you guys saw what happened with the injury back in November. He put no weight at all on his right leg. Well, this one, it was a little bit gingerly, albeit, but yeah, hobbled off, and that was the end of it. And you typically would know if somebody did put a stick in his skates and tripped him up, that somebody would come up to him and, like, pat him on the back or say, hey, I'm sorry. But that didn't happen. I think the guys just kind of were circled around there and seeing if he was going to be okay and getting up. So that leads me to believe, from what I saw, that he just lost an edge. And, yeah, he hobbled off into the locker room, and no further update from Jim Montgomery. But I would say, just based off of the initial observation, he may not be available for tomorrow. So we'll see what comes out of this. And for the Blues' perspective, you hope it's not nothing that's going to keep him out for any length of time.
And not to speculate with it, Lou, but going off of that, the biggest concern, obviously, if you're the Blues or Broberg, is re-aggravating something that, you know, we thought was going to be an injury that could keep him out 3 to 4 months. And, you know, he makes his comeback pretty quickly, and you're like, boy, I hope this thing's okay. Re-aggravating the same area, little concerning for somebody who obviously it's very important to have your knees and your legs.
Yeah, it could very well be, and we all know that was a knee ailment at the time. I'm not going to play doctor here, of course, and tell you that's what we're looking at.
Get reckless, Lou. So would you say it's the right meniscus, somewhere maybe the patella? What are we looking at here, Lou?
Give us a timeline too, Lou.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Just the way he hobbled off, it may have been one of those where he aggravated an ankle. I'm not going to speculate here.
It's better than a knee.
Say high ankle sprain, median ankle sprain.
Stop it, Brandon!
Listen, I want to know why you guys are talking about sunscreen when it's 5 degrees outside, or it's been 5 degrees outside. That's the biggest question here.
Lou,
well, I'm going on a cruise. It's January. My wife, every year for her birthday, we go out to Florida. Yeah.
It's nice to have indispensable money, isn't it, Lou?
Yeah, it's really nice to be rich,
isn't it? Yeah, no kidding, man.
Meanwhile,
let me know how it feels.
Meanwhile, Lou, I like to just sit in the bathtub with a toy boat and pretend I'm on a cruise.
That's what we do with Luke. At the end of the night, he has bath time, and we just have these boats in there.
And I don't put sunscreen on at that time either, too. So,
all right.
Wow.
Lou, let's get you out of here on this. The Blues had that weird game against Utah, and some of their top players were benched in that one. Jim Montgomery came on the station yesterday and kind of explained what their thought process was there. And we were wondering, are they going to reunite Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas heading into tomorrow night's game? Maybe the message sent, right? Benched, taken apart in that next game, then reunite. They decided not to do that at morning skate earlier today. What's your read on how they're approaching that Thomas and Buch pairing?
I just think they're wanting. I don't want to go that they're going there with Robert Thomas, because we all know, and you guys thought how good he was in the month of December. I mean, he was lights out. Now, has he played to that capability this month? I would say it's been more up and down. He's had his moments, obviously. We know how he plays. When he's on top of his game, he could be the best player on the ice. Pavel Buchnevich is the one that's I'd be most concerned with right now. I've just seen too many swaths of inconsistent, and boy, we see and hear that word a lot, don't we, from the Blues, the inconsistency. Specifically with him, I think it's been a broader spectrum. When Pavel Buchnevich, to me, guys, is going, you notice him on the defensive side of the puck, and I just don't notice him as much there, being as aggressive, being as disruptive as we have in the past. And usually when he's going on that side of the puck, it usually leads to offense for him. I think that's why we're seeing his production down right now. It's because he hasn't been as impactful on the defensive side of the puck for me. Now, somebody may have a difference of opinion on that, but that's the way I see it. And, yeah, from what we saw today, it looks like they're going to run the same group that they played with on Monday. And I can understand why, because other than the 6-on-5 situations, I thought they were pretty good 5-on-5 the other day. The only 5-on-5 goal that you gave up was that crazy it was a Brandon Saad block.
Yeah, the Brett Howden goal.
Yeah, and that was a block that just happened to fall to him in a good area of the ice where he was just able to get the shot off. So that's the only 5-on-5 goal that you surrendered in that game, and that's pretty good against a pretty darn good team. Other than that, I thought they had that game locked down in the third period. Now the 6-on-5 stuff, Jim Montgomery even said they were working on that today. They had a couple of issues that they felt like they wanted to address, and we saw it in the game. You give up 2 goals in the last 3 minutes, and that would have been a shame to lose that game because I thought they deserved to win it, and in the end that they did. But, boy, you were playing with fire a little bit. To answer your question, BK, it doesn't look like on the surface right now that they're going to go back to them. I'm not saying they won't in the future. I just think that they want to see how they want to get some sustainability with some of these lines. And Jim Montgomery even said that, from game to game, just because they win, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to roll back the same group because they just aren't consistent enough to do that. But I think in this case, it looks like they're going to because they like the game that they saw for the most part on Monday.
All right, Lou, get out of here, man. Appreciate the reporting. Appreciate all the insight into what happened earlier today.
Go get on that cruise.
Yeah, enjoy yourself as you go on cruises for the next 3 months. I'm sure that's kind of the way that this works as you're in season. We appreciate the time as always, my man.
You got it, boys. Take care.
Don't forget the suntan lotion.
That's Lou Korac. Appreciate his time as always. Covering the St. Louis Blues for NHL.com and on Twitter at LKorac10.
Just to go off the Broberg thing, hopefully it is, and this sounds awful to say, hopefully it is an ankle because it's not the knee. Like that's if I have a concern, it's aggravating the same area because 2 injuries that close together scares me in terms of recovery for Broberg. 100%. And a high ankle sprain or something like that with an ankle, that's long term also. Like you don't come back from that more than it's like 4 to 6 weeks when you have that type of issue. But my bigger thing is you just don't want to re-aggravate that same area.
Yeah, if it's a knee injury, like a serious knee injury, you're talking about months. If it's an ankle injury, you're talking about potentially up to weeks.
And the fact that, at least like Lou said, he put a little pressure on it compared to, like, when he went down versus Toronto, he couldn't put anything on it. Like, there was no putting pressure on it. So that's a good sign. But, man, that's not an easy thing to lose for the Blues. Despite he's not putting up the points that he was, that's still a guy who's playing 19 minutes a night.
It's not if there is a positive, if there is a silver lining. If it's more than 2 weeks, there's no pressure really. Like you basically get a month off.
Yeah,
because
you're right.
They have, 8 games now prior to that Four Nations face-off.
And then you're off for 2 weeks.
And then you're off for 2 weeks, and then you get back on the ice starting on February 22nd. So you literally have a month to potentially get yourself healthy, and all you end up missing there is the 8 games. Yeah. They're big games, so it sucks because this is a time where you really wanted to be able to take advantage, but it's better than missing like 20 or 15.
Nothing better than celebrating your 40th birthday and then finding out that I got to play 25 minutes a night again for the next 2 weeks. Happy birthday, Ryan Suter.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, is this opportunity too good for the Blues to pass up? We'll tell you about that coming up in just a little bit. But coming up next, one of my friends, Alex, does a Count the Ifs article every year over on rockmnation.com. It's from a zoo. And what he does is he goes through and says, okay, if this happens and this happens and this happens, then Missouri could end up getting to the college football playoff. And in some years, it's a very long list. 2 years ago, it was really hard to come up with how many ifs needed to go in the right direction for Mizzou in order for them to reach the college football playoff. This year was very simple. There were like 4 or 5 of them. If these things go right, Missouri ends up having a huge year. How many ifs are there that have to go in the right direction for this Cardinals team to really compete? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings as the NFL playoffs are here, and you can play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Like this weekend, looking at the Chiefs game, I'm going more on Travis Kelce, 69.5 receiving yards, more on Josh Allen, half a touchdown, and more on Kareem Hunt rushing for 33.5 yards. $10 on that can win you 40 plus, and DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my promo code 101WXOS. That's my promo code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus award is not withdrawable. Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, Alex, so my friend does a segment or a piece every year for Rock M Nation, and it's called Count the Ifs. And what he does is he looks through, okay, if this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and he keeps going on in that list, and he has the fewest number possible in order for Mizzou to make the college football playoff. I want to do that, but rip it off and put it towards the St. Louis Cardinals. Count the ifs. How many ifs need to go in the right direction for this team to get to the playoffs in 2025, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK, it might sound absurd on the surface, right? Because a lot of people just don't view this as a roster capable of making it to the 2025 postseason. I think the same could have been said this past year for some of the other teams that ended up making it to the playoffs, though. I think a lot of people were very, very skeptical on the Milwaukee Brewers just repeating what they had done previously, despite all of the moves that they had ended up making. It would have been absurd for anybody to say, hey, the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers, they're both going to make it to the postseason this year. The AL Central is actually going to get 3 teams in. Nobody would have bought that prior to the start of the regular season. Baseball's weird. Surprises happen. There's going to be a team that surprises us by the end of the year. It's possible it's the Cardinals. Unlikely, but possible. I have some ifs here. I have come up with a list of 8 things that need to happen for the Cardinals to make it to the 2025 season.
Well, that's satisfying. Only 8.
I'm curious if you guys think this would be enough, if there's anything on this list that you guys would get rid of, or if there's something else that you think I completely missed entirely. Okay?
Okay.
Let's start here. My first if. The Cardinals can make it to the 2025 postseason if Nolan Arenado is traded. That's my first if on this list. Next thing up. If Gorman and Walker reach their 2023 form. Not more, not less. Just have to be what they were in 2023 and play regularly. If Lars Nootbaar plays at least 140 games this year, just stay healthy, Newt. I'm not asking for you to be an all-star. I'm not asking for you to be something different than you've been previously production-wise, but Nootbaar, you got to be out there for at least 140 games. Fernandez has to replace Kittredge in terms of his production because right now there seems to be a little bit of a donut in that 8th inning leading into what you're going to get out of Ryan Helsley. Eric Fetty needs to repeat what he was in 2024. He can't go back to what he was prior to going overseas. He's got to be the same pitcher this year that he was a year ago. Sonny Gray has to start at least 30 games. Not talking about production. I have no doubts about his production. He's got to start at least 30 games for you. Quinn Matthews, start at least 15 games and give you a sub-4 ERA. And then the final one here, the final if, as we go through these, the count the ifs for the Cardinals to make it to the postseason this year. Willson Contreras has to be at least average defensively at first base. Doesn't have to be great, but he's got to be capable. He can't be Jose Martinez out there looking like me or Alex if we tried to play first base in a Major League Baseball game.
I mean, you guys are better than Jose.
No, Jose Martinez would have
promises.
made me look significantly better.
Those are my 8 things, the 8 ifs. If these happen, then I think the Cardinals can make it to the postseason in 2025. Are there anything on my list that you guys would strongly disagree with? It shouldn't be on the list, or is there anything else that you feel like I missed that needs to be added to the list?
I don't disagree with any of them. I think the one that I would like maybe alternate is the Quinn Matthews one, because I don't know if they need that many starts and him to be that good to get to a playoff spot. I think they need that many starts and Andre Palante to be that good for them to get to the playoff spot, because I think he's the certainty. Quinn Matthews is kind of the unknown. Here's the one that I would add. If the Cardinals get an MVP type of season from Willson Contreras, then they're a playoff team. I like looking at, and the Detroit Tigers are different because they had a Cy Young winner, and I think that's what catapulted them. But you go to the Milwaukee Brewers, they had Christian Yelich playing like an MVP in the first half of the season, and then William Contreras was an MVP top 5 by the end of the season.
And Willie Adames was really good all year.
You have to have, and yeah, he was top 10 for him. I didn't even look at that. You have to have, for the Cardinals to get to the playoffs, they need Willson Contreras to perform like an MVP-esque type of talent.
Yeah, that was going to be the caveat I added to the Wilson one, is I think he has to be a top 10 MVP guy. And the reason for me is I don't really care so much about the defense for him at first base, because if it's bad, you can put Burley at first. And all of a sudden, we'll see if the Cardinals finally commit to this and they start treating the DH as a position, not just hey, the guy can get like half an off day there. Then you can put Contreras there. So for me, it's more about his offense. If he stays healthy and he can be like a top 10 MVP candidate, I can see where this offense can really kind of take off. For the Quinn Matthews one, I don't know if you need 15 starts for him to be a playoff team. I'm more in line with what Alex was saying I think you've got to have McGreevy and Palante be the guys that they were last year. And because if they are, there's some stabilizing in the middle of that rotation, right? Because I don't trust Michaelis. Mats won't be healthy all season long. I'm skeptical of Eric Fetty, but you can throw Fetty into this as well. I do agree with that one. You need those three to kind of be where they were last year. And if you are, you're still missing some major upside in that rotation, but you know what you're going to get consistently on a night-in, night-out basis. And I do think that is important. One thing that I would add, you mentioned the Walker-Gorman have to get back to 2023 form. I will throw in another name into this mix. Not that he has to get back to form, but I think one of those one or two of these three names have to become middle-of-the-order hitters for this team. And that is Walker, that is Gorman, and that is Ivan Herrera. If one of those three or two of those three become middle-of-the-order hitters, now you're looking at a lineup. You're now looking at somebody that's there to support Wilson Contreras. So that's the one that I would kind of add in as like a little caveat to that one. But outside of that, I agree with most of those. Nootbaar's health, like I don't know if that's a big if for me, but I do agree with, okay, he's going to have to play well for this team to be a playoff contender.
And I guess I'll add one more into this. If Mason Wynn builds off of what he did last year.
I just think be what you were. For him, like I don't.
That's where I am.
It could be
That's
unfair
got to be the
of me to do
floor,
this.
though.
I don't feel that way. I feel like if Mason, I might be alone on this island. I think what Mason Wynn did last year is good enough. And I don't mean that to be low on Mason Wynn. I do think there's potentially a higher ceiling there. But if he goes out there and is even a little worse offensively this year than he was a year ago, I don't want people to view that as a disappointment or a failure. I think we need to be realistic about how hard it is to be that good defensively and an above average hitter. And for this team, if he ends up just being a league average hitter, given what they have around him, and in this scenario, you've got Gorman, who's 15 to 20% above league average offensively. Walker, same thing. Nootbaar, same thing. Wilson Contreras, 25% above league average offensively. Donovan is consistently 20% above league average offensively. You've got enough around him in the scenario that we've provided here. I'm not worried about Mason Wynn. Like, I think in an ideal scenario, Wynn's hitting either 8th or 9th in your lineup most days. I know last year he was your leadoff hitter, and it went okay for them. I think in an ideal world, that leadoff spot belongs to Donovan or Nootbaar. And Wynn is much lower, and he's just a pure contact guy, and anything he gives you offensively is gravy. He can be what early career Yadier Molina was for the Cardinals. But I know many disagree with me on that, Alex, so I get the other perspective.
Here's my only thought with it. I know that the defense is going to take a step back because I don't trust the first baseman that he's going to be throwing to, and I think the offense has to shadow over the defense a little bit.
And that's why I had Wilson Contreras has to be average defensively.
Yeah, which makes sense. But I kind of agree with Tanner. I think the bat's more important with him because Alec Burleson can be there, but one of those two have to be above average for you.
I think that's totally fair. The reason to defend my Quinn Matthews thing, just to explain it a little bit here, not necessarily defend it, explain why I had him on the list.
Defend that trash
That was
take.
terrible.
That was terrible.
Your Honor, the reason I had Quinn Matthews starting at least 15 games with a sub-4 ERA is because of how it would happen. When you have Andre Palante, Michael McGreevy, Miles Michaelis, hell, even Eric Fetty to a degree, those guys are all contact pitchers, right? Like, you're going to give up a decent amount of contacts. I do think for this team to get into the postseason, they have to add somebody else that has swing and miss to their rotation. Right now, you have that at the front end with Sonny Gray. I think it almost gets underrated how good he was in that regard last year. Quinn Matthews led all of minor league baseball in strikeouts last year. He is somebody that if he gets to the big league level and has success, it should be a strikeout guy. Not going to be at the top of the league in that regard, but I think he could be a legit number 3 starter for a postseason team. Like, you go into a game 3, Quinn Matthews on the mound, you don't feel like you're overmatched in that regard. That's why I would have him here. Now, if you wanted to make an amendment of count the ifs for the Cardinals, not just to get into the postseason, but to win, maybe that's more of what I'm doing here, and I combined the two of this is something that is necessary to get through October more than it is to get to October. I could see that argument.
See, where I didn't know, because I was new to this whole what-if game. One of the things for me that I had on my list, but I don't know how it kind of plays to this, and it kind of ties into what your thought process is with Quinn Matthews, is what needs to happen for the Cardinals to make the playoffs. Mo's going to have to bring in some reinforcements at the deadline, and that was where I would look at the number 2 spot of, when you mention that rotation, I don't know if it's fair to put that on Quinn Matthews as a rookie who, as you saw at AAA, had learning curves at AAA, right? I mean, they're just going to only get bigger when you get to the big league level. He's not going to come up and be a Paul Skeens. I don't think. I could be wrong.
No, he's not.
But
Paul Skeens was 1 of 1. Nobody should put that on him.
Exactly. If that's the case, then there's going to be learning curves, and I think that's too much to put on him as an organization, even through a retool. So that's why the one that I thought of was Mo's going to have to be, if they need to be a playoff team, they need reinforcements at that number 2 spot. Two others that I would throw out here.
Before you move on from this, I do want to ask you one question, follow up on that. If I told you this year that the Cardinals' number 2 starter gave them 31 starts, 180 innings, a 3.3 ERA, and 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, how do you feel about that by the end of the season?
Was that Fetty?
Just out of curiosity, how do you feel about that by the end of the year?
I mean,
31 starts, 180 innings, 3.3 ERA, and an 8 strikeout per 9 rate.
I think if we're talking about a number 2, we'd probably be still looking for more. But if you're telling me that that's what I'd get, I'd hit the button.
I think I would hit the button. I think that's a 2B, but yeah.
That's why I had him in my list. Eric Fetty last year was.
I knew who that was.
Those were literally Eric Fetty's numbers over the course of the season. And if you repeat that, don't get better, just do the exact same thing once again. I think it's likely he falls back a little bit. But if you were able to repeat that performance, I think you've got a number 2 starter, and Matthew slots in as number 3.
You're both held in contempt.
I could see that, though.
I don't know what that means.
All right,
I just watch a lot of law shows.
You had one other thing that you wanted to get to here, T-Bone.
Well, the one that I would add, I do agree with they should be trying to trade Arenado. If he is here, though, the way that you can make that kind of work as the amendment for this needs to happen is he's got to get back to being MVP form, Nolan Arenado. They can still be a playoff team with Nolan Arenado. He can't be an overpaid Gold Glove third baseman that basically gives you Brian Hayes production. Like, he will need to get back to MVP caliber form if he is here. And again, I still think they should trade him. But if I'm feeling like he's going to be here come spring training, he's got to be MVP caliber offense and can't be a problem in the locker room.
See, I would say you don't need MVP caliber. I need
Wilson Contreras to be MVP caliber. I just need you to be above average.
Yeah, just be like 15% above league average.
I do need you to be Gold Glove-esque at defense, though.
Definitely.
Sure.
Somebody on the text line brought this up, and I think it's a totally fair point, and it's something that I'm going to be curious how it plays into some of the conversations this year baseball-wise. From the 217. Guys, you're doing a good job talking about baseball in a tough time to do so, but 9 of us are currently eating lunch, and all of us have the exact same opinion, sadly. The Dodgers have ruined baseball for us. That and the inept Cardinals ownership is the reason our company didn't get green seats again this year.
Man, that's what you're thinking about when you're eating lunch?
I think there are a lot of people that saw the Dodgers win the World Series this past year and then have watched this offseason where they were in on Soto and have done everything that they've done, especially on the pitching side of things, and say to themselves, this isn't a crapshoot anymore. The Dodgers are better than everybody. The Dodgers are probably going to win 110 games next year, something like that. And you're going to get to the postseason, and we're going to have the conversation of, is this still a crapshoot, or are the Dodgers inevitable? The Dodgers nearly lost last year to the San Diego Padres in the playoffs, but they didn't. And that's going to be something, I think the best thing that could happen for baseball this year is the Dodgers lose. They need the Dodgers to lose so badly. Because even if you're not where that guy is yet, if this year the same thing happens and the Dodgers end up winning 107 games and they run through October and they're the clear-cut best team in the National League again, you're going to get there. There will be people that end up there at some point in the next calendar year.
I unfortunately think the damage is already going to be done by that point. I think a lot of people are already going to be broke from baseball because of the Dodgers and not put any time into it by the time the postseason rolls around.
See, I think we're still in a good spot. Now, not with where baseball is. Like, they need a cap, but like the Yankees won 3 in a row, and we're outspending everybody like crazy in the 2000s, and people still came back. I think the reason that he's still, reason he's feeling that way, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, I think it's just because the Cardinals aren't doing what the Cardinals typically do. If you felt like the Cardinals were like a 90-win team, I think you'd look at the Dodgers and go, okay, how are we going to beat the Dodgers? But you wouldn't feel like, man, they're inevitable.
Yeah, I don't think any team is looking at that, though. How are we going to beat the Dodgers?
I think the Padres are a team that's like in Arizona, too. I think they're both in great spots right now. I think they're looking at going, man, that Dodger team's really good. We also feel like we've got a chance. Maybe not a great chance, but we've got a chance when we get to October.
I don't know, man. I feel differently about this.
I do, too.
I think this is I remember watching those Yankees teams growing up, and they were amazing. Absolutely amazing. This Dodgers lineup has like top 3 guys at their position at 5 different spots on the field, and then their rotation legitimately has the potential to have 6 number 1 starters. Not kidding.
And their bullpen
literally 6 number 1 starters. And their bullpen significantly improved from what it was a year ago.
And you know the team's going to make more moves once the season rolls along.
In my lifetime, this is the best collection of talent that I've ever seen.
And the reason that you go back to those 2000s with the Yankees, like people were back with baseball because of the steroid era. There was a lot of excitement for a lot of the talent. It was all power swings, and you knew that something could happen.
And that Yankees team was amazing.
And they had Derek Jeter, who wasn't very good.
Correct, but they also ended up adding some talent around him. But, man, a lot of those guys were also homegrown. A lot of those Yankees players were homegrown, whereas the Dodgers, now you look at it, it's like,
Hey, they got Max
Come on,
Muncy. He wasn't homegrown.
Who's the
Gavin Lund. They traded
Will
Gavin Lund.
Smith
Will
is their
Smith.
best homegrown player right now.
I mean, technically, Freddie
Who's
Freeman's
second?
from L.A.
Technically, Kershaw's probably 1.
Sure,
Smith
but
would be 2.
I'm not even sure he's in the rotation to start out the year.
Great bullpen arm.
Great bullpen arm.
Who's their second best homegrown player right now on that roster? That's the thing that I think gets you is like,
Is Dustin May still on that team?
yeah, I mean technically he missed like the entirety
Bobby
of
Miller?
last
He
season.
might be in AAA with Sasaki. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who their best homegrown talent is.
The answer is they're on different teams.
It's crazy, man.
By the way,
'Cause-
go ahead.
Amateur free agency and Andy Pajes, you got him.
Who?
Backup catcher.
Oh, Pedro.
Other than that, Tony Gonsolin,
Oh.
Dustin May.
Ooh.
Man, that's it.
Bobby Miller.
Emmett Sheehan. Some of the young arms that they've developed are potentially up there, but man, it is all coming externally. Coming up next, is this the opportunity that's just too good for the Blues to pass up on? We'll talk about that and try to brighten up the mood a little bit here on PK and Ferrario.
Tanner Henderson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as they will be taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent Mayor Standard Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
All right, Alex, so JT Miller's name is once again coming up in the trade discussions, and we've got to at least have this conversation. Elliot Friedman said over the weekend the Miller trade was so close to potentially taking place that the Vancouver Canucks actually considered sitting him out of the game against the Edmonton Oilers. That reported trade was potentially with the Rangers, once again, and it fell through. He ended up playing, but it's looking more and more likely that JT Miller is probably going to be dealt at some point prior to this year's trade deadline. So The Athletic took a look at who are the teams most likely to make a trade for JT Miller. And the Blues weren't mentioned in this. The Rangers were obviously the number one team. It sure sounds like they're the favorite right now to land him. Carolina was mentioned. The New Jersey Devils was mentioned. The Dallas Stars were in this. Boston Brewers and the Utah Hockey Club. Those were the teams listed as most likely to make a move for JT Miller. I don't think it's something that the Blues are going to do. I'm not even sure that it's something the Blues should do. Miller is a prickly personality. There have been times where he hasn't necessarily gotten along the best way possible, but at least based on this piece in The Athletic, when things are going well, he's a guy that brings out the best in your team. It's just when things go poorly that it ends up potentially being a problem for you. He's got 3 years left on his contract, $8 million per year after this. Is this an opportunity, Alex, that's too good for the Blues to completely pass up? Do they at least need to place a call and see kind of what the situation is with JT Miller?
I wouldn't. And the prickly personality is the part that is why I would be very hesitant to do this. I mean, we've talked a lot about what are the Blues missing? What's the missing piece? It's a top-line winger that can play with Robert Thomas. Well, JT Miller is the centerman. Now, you could use him as a winger. He's played the position as in the past, but I got to imagine when you're a prickly personality and you're 31 years old, you're going to play the position you want to play. So that's kind of strike one, red flag number one for me. But when I look at who JT Miller is and where the Blues are at, it's two polarizing figures that I don't know if you want to put together for a relationship. And what I mean by that is JT Miller, why is he frustrated in Vancouver? Well, it's because the players aren't playing up to the potential that could get them to the Stanley Cup. He's mad at Elias Pettersson because Elias Pettersson's not playing the best. Well, when he gets in a situation that he gets traded to the Blues, there's going to be a lot of young guys on the ice that are going to be making mistakes. Snuggerud, Dvorsky, depending on what a couple of these other guys are looking like. Sure, you got some other veteran forwards that are there, but these guys are going to be getting top 6, top 9 minutes. Is JT Miller going to be cool with Jimmy Snuggerud turning the puck over in the third period when they're trying to win a hockey game? I don't think so, and that's going to stunt the development. I don't even know if it's worth a phone call, and on top of all of this, you got 3 more years at $8 million for a 31-year-old forward. To me, you got that player. It's Pavel Buchnevich. I think what you're looking for is you're looking for a younger guy that fits more into the line of where your team's future is at. I don't even know if it's worth a phone call. If I'm the Blues, the phone call is Elias Pettersson.
So he's not getting dealt, though.
I don't believe so.
I think you make the call, and they tell you no, and you go your separate ways. And that's fine.
Agreed.
I have another reason why I wouldn't trade for JT Miller, Alex. Where's he playing for you?
It's a good question.
This sounds weird because I said at the beginning of the year, I thought their biggest need was number 2 center. I no longer feel that way. Braden Shen has not only filled in admirably, that guy's been awesome. And right now, the number one thing this team has going for it is that second line. I'm not breaking them up. So, okay, I'm putting JT Miller on my top line and putting him into the situation that Robert Thomas has been in where you don't have clear options with him winger-wise. Okay, that's probably not going to be the best situation for JT Miller to come in and have a bunch of success and to be in a good mood. So I'm trading for this center that I don't necessarily have a clear spot for. JT Miller ain't coming in and playing on third line, I can promise you that much. So now I'm flipping Robert Thomas to being a regular third-line center for me. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He just doesn't fit into their plans currently. Mm-hmm. If you're going to trade for a center, it's a third-line center. It's a guy like Michael Granlund. That's a guy that makes some sense for this team. I'm not going out there and trading for a star center because right now that's not what I need. If they're going to make a move for a player like a JT Miller, and I don't know who this guy is or if he currently exists on the market, it's a guy that can play to JT Miller's degree, on the wing with Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
That's the move that I would at least be curious or interested about for the Blues. This one, to me, just doesn't make sense given where the Blues are at right now.
Yeah, and look, I don't mind the center, because if Elias Pettersson was available, I would not look at that and say no way because he's a centerman, because I think you could do what you did with Robert Thomas. Dvorsky's just a winger for you moving forward for the near future. And I mean, JT Miller scenario, you're bringing him in for 3 years before he's a UFA.
What are you doing with Pettersson, though, in that scenario?
Second line center.
So you're taking Braden Shen off of that line.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, Braden Shen, that's an elite third line center to have. I mean, that's an elite line to have in your third line. And now you're going back to what you were in 2018, 2019, where top to bottom, you had Braden Shen, Ryan O'Reilly, and I mean, Tyler Bozak, who's not the same level as this, but where Tyler Bozak was at that season is where Braden Shen, in my opinion, is at. Like, I would absolutely do that. And then you've got Dvorsky, and you say, look, you're just going to be a centerman for us, or you're just going to be a winger for us.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with having a versatile centerman who's on the wing that can go back to it.
I would do it. The other thing is that it just would cost you so much. I don't even know that he's necessarily worth having the conversation.
And that's the thing. And that's why it's like even JT Miller, it's got to be the right guy. JT Miller is not the player I'm going to trade for to push Braden Shen down to a third line centerman role, because I don't think he's the same player that he was last year with the Vancouver Canucks.
Somebody on the text line said, what about Brock Besser, guys? There's conversations that he's potentially available as well. We've had this conversation before, so we don't need to have a lot of time with it. He's a free agent at the end of the season. He's going to get paid at a really high level because he's going to be 28 years old. To me, I think you're just locking yourself into a slightly better and older version of Jake Neighbors. So I'm not making that move. That's not, to me, what they're looking for right now. If he was under contract for multiple seasons, maybe it would make more sense. But again, he's about to be a UFA. He's probably going to get $8+ million a year. That's not the kind of guy that I think they're looking for.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, that's the same thing as what Jake DeBrusk was this past offseason. Like, Jake DeBrusk was that guy, 27 years old, and you were bringing him in, but you were locking him in. And he was $5.5 million. You're right. Brock Besser's going to get like $8.5 million for where the cap is. But look what Jake DeBrusk is. I'd take 17 goals right now, but you're probably going to get 25, 26, and that's going to be it.
And then you're paying $8 million.
Yeah. You don't need that. You need 35 to 40 goals. That's what you're looking for.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to download. It's super easy to use. You could potentially rack up some rewards over there as well, so be sure to download it today. It is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can always check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Alex, I'll be going on my cruise starting this weekend. However,
hell yeah,
if you're staying here in beautiful St. Louis, you could go out to Hot Shots in Fenton, and you can join the Fast Lane and the Riz Show out there to watch the championship games at Hot Shots in Fenton. They'll also have a pregame tailgate that starts at 11 o'clock, goes until 2 right before kickoff. Plenty of screens. You can watch the AFC and NFC championship games. Check them out there. The Riz Show is going to be performing their Dance for the Pick'em Punishment at halftime of Game 1. So get out there. Alex going to be there. T-Bone's going to be there. Riz Show, Fastlane, they'll all be at Hot Shots in Fenton on Sunday. Details found right now at 101ESPN.com. Alex, final thing today before we get out of here as we go through the BK and Ferrario Rewind. We opened up the show by talking about Jim Montgomery's interview yesterday on the Fastlane. It was fantastic if you missed any of it. And he talks about benching players and the way that they go about it, what they want to get out of it. And we wondered aloud, are they going to go to something different with the lines today? They're going to go back to Booch and Thomas on that top line. They decided not to. Did that surprise you?
No, it didn't, because Jim Montgomery's kind of setting the standard. I wondered if they would, but it makes sense that he's not. Going back to them is just allowing what took place against Utah to continue. Him sticking to this is basically telling these guys, no, you're not going to go back together. The reason he broke them up was he said, I want a workman's mentality on every single line, and I want those guys to recognize that they can't rely on their teammates to cover up their warts. And so this is Jim Montgomery setting the standard for the team, that if you're not going to play to the level that we think you're capable of, you're going to play on a different line. And so I think it's smart by him. Now, if you lose to Vegas on Thursday, I really wonder what you do.
Sure. That's going to be another big test for them. They are off tonight, back in action tomorrow. No Curbs for us today. He's going to join us on Friday here on the show. We'll talk to Joey Vitale yesterday.
We're going to talk to him yesterday?
We'll talk to Joey Vitale tomorrow to preview the Blues versus the Vegas Golden Knights. Had a few days off here. It's a rarity for the Blues in this schedule, one of the light workloads over a 10-day stretch of the entire schedule.
Don't get too comfortable, because February and March are going to be
time.
Ballbusters.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN.